nigga, I'm still hustling. County jail for a blow, Robbie Charles, being a bomb. SCI, Memphis in the hole for the firearm. Project Born, Hood, Bay shot, niggas in the base. 2001, tried to book me on a murder case. Seen so many prison bars, that's why I got bars. Depression had me on the bars, I stay on Mars. Got my money out the sewers, so that means it's dirty. Police patrol at 7 a.m., so we hustle early. Cause the early bird don't get the word. They get my bread, chopper stringing like a bird. Kidnapping murder niggas over drug dealing. Verse 48, you seen them scary ass niggas squealing. I'm veteran in the game and I'm still getting. Broke up with my ex and I'm still hitting. A nigga play with me, that still bust. I'ma hustle till I die, nigga, I'm still hustling. I'm veteran in the game and I'm still getting. Broke up with my ex and I'm still hitting. A nigga play with me, that still bust. I'ma hustle till I die, nigga, I'm still hustling.
Clutch cargo up in this motherfucker. Welcome back. Welcome back to the motherfucking News Underground. Thank you so much, Little Problem. That was 45. It's the realest motherfucking news channel on Twitch, easily, bar none. Welcome. If you're looking for real news, guess what? You just found it. Congratulations. Congratulations. The one motherfucker on Twitch ain't trying to sell you shit. By the way, I got a merch store. You can check it out. You got that Garbage Fuel merch, sponsored 100% by Garbage Fuel. Garbage Fuel, made from 100% garbage juice.
Garbage fuel.
Sourced from your local dumpster. Rainwater pulled directly from a fucking rusty dumpster and put into a bottle and sold into a fucking store, and you must consume it! Welcome back to the show. This is the News Underground. I am Abandoned Nihilism. We're going to be covering stuff pretty quickly here. I'm going to get right to it. We're going to be doing Trump, Ukraine, then, Trump, Gaza, then Ukraine. And it's mostly going to be, big chunk is going to be Gaza, of course, because of the immense suffering that's happening there. And we're talking historic suffering. There's no other place on planet Earth where people are suffering more. And that really says something, because there's a lot of people on planet Earth suffering, especially in the African continent. What is this anime? I gotta check this shit out, dude. Fuck yeah. All right, here we go. Trump time. Trumpy Trump. Oh, wait, we love Trump. This Duke, come on, everybody. This Duke boy, he's gonna make it through. This Duke boy is gonna skate through. It's going to be a real quick one, so you don't need to worry about that. Yeah, we're going to get to this other stuff later, even a Bernie clip. That's going to be later in the week. But I found this great video, MSNBC, giving a 60-second Trump update. So that's it. We're just going to do this, and then we're going to move on with our lives, because we don't know what's happening until we get to the fucking conclusion. That's how this court shit works. I'm not going to waste time like MSNBC over here, blowing the fattest loads you've ever seen. It's unbelievable. Going completely balls to the wall. And it is, they're like, it's a historic trial, and it is. But they are sacrificing every other piece of news to cover what is really, a couple hours worth of coverage, and then you should be moving on to other subjects. And they just don't stop. It is 24/7 Trump, or Israeli apologists. Every day I have CNN on, talking about mainstream media here. I have CNN when I turn on my TV. Every single time I turn on my TV, there's a representative from Israel talking about, repeating the victimhood narrative. We can't do no wrong. We're, it's a war, it's a war, it's a war. Tapper Jake sitting there, pretending to look concerned. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No pushback whatsoever. Anyway, let's get to it. That was a good fucking track. We were also watching cinematics in the Shadow Towers for PlayStation 1, game I've been meaning to get back to. Been meaning to get back to a lot of video games. I have had zero time for it. I've only had time to buy video games. That's about all the time I got, folks. My glasses are filthy, by the way. All right, but no, let's do the 60 seconds of Trump and then move on with our lives. Here we go.
The day began with a long-awaited contempt hearing for Donald Trump's alleged violations of the gag order. Now, Judge Warren
All right, hold on. Sorry. This player, I hate this. I just hate it so much. All right, we're going to go about right there and refresh this bad boy.
The day began with a long-awaited contempt
Okay, and it reverted back, and it doesn't load. Okay, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just the worst. It's just the fucking every time, man. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's the worst. It's the worst. I can't pause it yet. I got to adjust the volume. It's just, it's like taking a car with round wheels and putting square wheels on it and then convincing everybody, oh, this is better. When it so obviously isn't. Fuck me. Fix this shit, YouTube. Spend $1 billion. You got it literally in the bank just sitting there. There's probably $1 billion in the couches. Okay. Trump time.
Alleged violations of the gag order. Now, Judge Juan Merchan did not rule from the bench, and interestingly, DA Alvin Bragg's office did not ask for jail for Trump's contempt. However, the biggest takeaway, Todd Blanche, Trump's attorney, got bench slapped by Juan Merchan. Merchan telling him, you are losing all credibility with the court. I would not want to be Todd Blanche today. But then we got David Pecker back on the stand for his continued direct examination testimony on behalf of the prosecution. David Pecker making it clear there was an agreement between Pecker, Michael Cohen, and Donald Trump to make sure that the National Enquirer caught and killed any negative stories about Donald Trump. Why?
Yeah.
Pecker testified under oath so that it would not embarrass the Trump campaign. We heard all about Dino the doorman, that they paid him $30,000 to make sure that he didn't come forward with a story about some alleged illegitimate love child between Donald Trump and his housekeeper. We then also heard the beginning.
Yeah, so that wasn't even true, by the way. He got 30 grand just to make some shit up. My boy, the doorman, knowing exactly how to play that shit. Big props to my boy, the doorman. Playing the National Enquirer, getting an easy 30G for making some shit up, yo. Love it. You still watch shorts as normal videos. Oh, come on. Was some cockamamie, stupid fucking way of doing it. God, I hate it.
Of the story of Karen McDougal, who claimed that she had a years-long affair with Donald Trump. Now, we're going to be back on Thursday for more testimony from David Pecker.
Yeah, that's his name. Pecker. You bet it is. Pecker. I know. It's great. It's fucking great, dude. It's politics, dog. Welcome to politics. It's great. All right, there you go. That's Trump shit. Look, and if you want more Trump shit, then you know where to go. The motherfucking home of the progressives, MSNBC. You know, like if you want more Trump, I don't see why I should spend too much time on this guy when you can't. Every news agency on the planet is covering this. So I'm not going to cover it in detail. Not until we get some kind of conclusion. We talk about this guy plenty. All right, so we're moving on now to horror. Do you guys like horror, but like not like fun horror, like movies and stuff, but actual horror, like the Holocaust and stuff, like really just like piles and piles of dead bodies? Do you guys like talking about that stuff? No? Really? No kidding. The thing that bothers me is that this whole like there's no other way, there's no other way, and it's so disgusting to me because it's like, unbelievable that you would have that opinion, that the only way is to kill. And you look at all these examples of history where it was like wildly unnecessary. All right, so let's get into it. Israel, Gaza. Thankfully, it looks like Iran's out of the picture for now. Welcome, Carl Toes. Welcome back. But we got some news. We got a mass grave getting uncovered that we got to talk about. Hezbollah here getting a big O strike that Israel is gloating about, and we're going to show some of that. eyewitness reports of immense civilian suffering, just confirmation, of course, because anytime you try to point out any kind of fact about the atrocities, the bad actors come in and say Hamas numbers or Hamas propaganda. So how about we just hear from people who were actually there, so we get some eyewitness reports. Looks like the Rafah operation is going to move forward, whatever that means, moving ahead. You know, does that mean massive airstrikes, you know, tens of thousands of civilians dying? Does that mean, you know, going in surgically, which just means that they're only going to kill a couple hundred civilians, you know, per movement or, you know, maneuver? These people are stuck there. You need to remember that. I mean, when's the last time we've ever seen anything like Rafah in the past? You know, we're gonna have to go way back, like hundreds of years, to go back to find a scenario, a military scenario like this, where hundreds of thousands of civilians are corralled into one area, and then the army pushes even harder into those areas. I mean, I'm sure there's a historian somewhere that could give us some kind of analog, but I feel like we're gonna have to go back several hundred years. We got a pretty great update here from Owen Jones about the UNRWA lies. So, you know, I've been talking about UNRWA and about how Israel has, you know, successfully attacked UNRWA and destroyed its reputation, and the United States has gone along with this. The UK has gone along with the lies about UNRWA. Warsaw Ghetto. I mean, the difference is that, you know, those soldiers were told, you know, kill, go crazy, round them up, and take them somewhere. But what will the IDF, you know, soldiers be told? You know, what do you do? Do you just kill anybody like a Nazi would, or would, you know, are you rounding people up? You know, or because it's like, are they just going to go in and pretend like it's just about Hamas and not about scaring the shit out of everybody and pushing them? So it's weird. I don't think the Warsaw I mean, you're on the right path. I don't know if I fully agree though, Clutch, because it's like, you know, there is a difference between the IDF and the Nazis. It's not a one-to-one comparison. They're going to be, you know, their mission is going to be different going in there. Why did they ban TikTok? Are they just racist? The Nazis came in and slaughtered them. Yeah, but I mean, so once again, they're not, the civilians in Rafah are not going to be resisting en masse. It's like women and children. It's like mostly a bunch of kids, literally, almost literally. So, you know, it's not exactly the same, but it's a similar situation where you're pushing tens of thousands in the case of the Warsaw Ghetto. You're pushing those people basically into a corner. I wanted to point out EU is joining the probe.
I'm Amy Goodman.
We're gonna there was this really great 5-minute clip here from Democracy Now! State Department exposed Israel units' rights abuses. Sorry about all the uhs. Sorry about that. And then we're gonna move on to Ukraine. So let's get to it here. Let's start. You know, benefit of the doubt. Let's give Israel a chance to speak, which is always, you know, but it's almost unnecessary at this point, because you know exactly what a defender of Israel is going to say. We're fully justified in everything that we do. We're the world's biggest, most justified victims. You know, everything we do is in the effort of eliminating Hamas, because that's our current narrative. And if you dare deviate from our narrative, then you're an anti-Semite, yada yada. You know, so it really is. It's almost unnecessary. But let's hear them out. Let's see what they got. The Sun happy to give them a platform. What's happening in Gaza is the biggest crime since the Holocaust. Getting up there. I mean, there's a big difference though between the death factories that the Nazis built and what's happening in the Gaza Strip, because like it's almost like, you know, Ben Gvir has the balls to like, no, let's eradicate them. Let's has the balls to really say what the people are demanding. Some of the people. But Bibi Netanyahu over here kind of wants his cake and eat it too. He wants somehow to ethnically cleanse this area without a massive humanitarian disaster, because he knows, like, of course, the West. If he can just remove people from their land but not totally eradicate them like in the West Bank, then he'll get some slaps on the wrist, but he'll get to keep his job. If he goes full blown death factory, yeah, it's would Joe Biden support the Israel? It's almost questionable, like, because the support for Israel from the West is so unquestioning, regardless of the administration. It's hard to say what they would support at that point, but politically it'd be a big no-no for the rest of the world. At least the UK and Canada would completely have to separate themselves. The conservatives in the UK could no longer pretend, that this is acceptable in any way. If they went to that level where they're just like murdering civilians, anything that moves as they're entering Rafah. I don't think that's how they're going to do it. But once again, though, does Bibi Netanyahu have the balls to load up a bunch of buses and drive them into Egypt? It's so we can speculate all day. Really, I think what we talked about last weekend is the most likely scenario, which is Israel gives Rafah after doing this. I don't think they're going to go full airstrikes. They're going to probably do some airstrikes, but it's going to be a lot of soldiers' boots on the ground going in there, like a massive campaign of soldiers' boots on the ground going in there. They're gonna pretend like they did their job. They're going to be like, okay, we did it. Hamas defeated, yay. And of course, that's not going to be the case. But then I think what they're going to do is they're going to give Rafah over to Egypt. Just cut that part out and say, okay, here you go, Egypt. Rafah's yours. And all the motherfuckers in it. And then they're going to put up a wall. And Egypt's going to be like, what? We don't agree to that. Fuck that shit. What are you talking about? But no, then Israel's going to, after months and months, 6 months go by, 12 months go by. They get some barricades up, maybe temporary at first. Then they reinforce them. And it's like, no, it's Egypt's problem. There's 2 million people, Egypt's problem. And then they just, any Palestinian left that's in north of Rafah is kicked into Rafah, right? Everyone else from the north on down, from Gaza City on down, is squeezed into Rafah, right? You put up a wall and then you squeeze everyone in there. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. You get the best of both worlds. You avoid a humanitarian disaster. Israel will come out and say, "Oh, what? It's we're literally giving our land away to Egypt. Why are they bitching? Why are they bitching? Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be the con of the century." I think that's what's going to happen. That's my guess, is that they're going to go in, pretend like they eliminated Hamas, declare victory, and then just give the whole thing over to Egypt. And then that becomes part of the Sinai Peninsula or whatever. Totally wild, dude. Totally wild. I don't know. It's better than killing everybody. It's better than creating a famine that forces a riot at the border of the Sinai Peninsula, and then everyone just runs into Egypt. It's better than that. It's better than doing that. No, I'm not talking about Egypt giving up the Sinai. I'm talking about Israel giving up Rafah and giving it to Egypt with all those people in it, and then exiling the rest of the Palestinians into Rafah. Yeah. They're like, wait a minute, why would Israel giving up? No, it's brilliant though, because then you avoid the humanitarian disaster of, starving millions of children. Actually brilliant. In a disgusting supervillain kind of way, let me just be clear. In a horrible way, it's brilliant. So apparently this strike really hurt Hezbollah. Israel's going to keep control over that new highway they built. Oh, yeah. total apartheid rules. You know, Palestinians are not allowed to drive on it, of course. Okay, what is this? Is this like Final Fantasy battle music? What the fuck is this? All right, he's gonna say something. I'm gonna turn the volume back up. Use Karaga.
התוצאות המבצעיות הן מרשימות מאוד. מחצית ממפקדי חיזבאללה בדרום לבנון חוסל. אלה האנשים שהיו אחראים על הפעולה ההתקפית, על הרצון לפגוע באזרחי מדינת ישראל. אנחנו גרמנו לכך שאו שהם מתים, או שהם מתחבאים ומפקירים את דרום לבנון לפעולתו של צה"ל שנעשית באופן אינטנסיבי.
Look, I'm not shedding any tears for Hezbollah either. I think all this bullshit that Iran does is, you know, against the West is counterproductive. They have a great point to make that the West is totally hypocritical when it comes to how they treat Arabs in the Middle East. Iran has the right to defend itself, absolutely. But antagonizing everybody with, you know, with all this, all it does is feed into Bibi Netanyahu's victimhood narrative, you know, into this victimhood narrative that, you know, the moment Israel drops its guard, that the Arab world is going to attack. It's tough, and I get it, right? Because it's tough for like some whitey, privileged Westerner to be like, you know, stop hitting back. But the military attacks, the rockets, the supporting Hamas, you know, through Hezbollah, it's all been counterproductive, and it's all fed perfectly into these really effective right-wing narratives of, you know, this military action is fully justified. You know, we're under attack from these Arab elements, right? So it's been counterproductive. It hasn't worked. You know, it really hasn't. It hasn't worked as a legitimate military deterrent. They're easily thwarted. They're easily swatted away. It doesn't work from a political perspective, in terms of getting people on your side, convincing. And I understand it's an uphill battle because, like I said, the West is wildly hypocritical when it comes to, you know, you could be squeaky clean, minding your own business, and you're still going to get treated like shit. But this, the strategy of terrorism, you know, this little, you know, piecemeal terrorism here and there, terrorism, to generate fear, it literally just feeds into Ben-Gvir and Bibi Netanyahu's extremely effective anti-Arab, anti-Muslim narratives. And, you know, like I said before, I know I'm privileged. I get it. my ass isn't getting bombed right now. My village isn't under attack. But I can't help but see the last several decades of this strategy fail utterly. And what am I just supposed to say? You know, they're freedom fighters, and we're just supposed to go along with that goofy ass Qatar narrative, that Saudi Arabian narrative, that, you know, these theocratic, monstrous terrorists, literally, Hamas, some of the scum of the earth, are resistance, that, you know, because they are legitimately holding the people of Palestine hostage. Look what they've done. Look how they've fed right into Bibi Netanyahu's desires to take this. It's all justified. You know, it was Bassem Youssef who pointed out, you know, if Bibi Netanyahu stops this right now, he'll get a Nobel Peace Prize. Right, because it's the narrative is that it's 100% justified. And why is it justified? The strategies and barbarism of Hamas. It's all been counterproductive and fed right into these fucking narratives. Occupied if it were not for Hezbollah. I'm not saying Iran shouldn't you know, build up an army and, right, you know, do all this stuff. But the meddling, the support of the terrorism, what, are we just going to deny that shit isn't happening? I'm not talking about disarm yourself and lay down like Gandhi as an entire country. Iran has a right to do all of that. But this goofy meddling, the rockets, the terrorism, it's counterproductive. Feeds right into these narratives that allow the West to support this. Who's a better boogeyman than Hamas? I keep saying this, but honestly, fed right into Bibi Netanyahu. Every single checkbox checked. You know? There you go. That's some Israeli propaganda. So now let's get into the reality of the situation, where to call this a war is a joke, quite frankly. Oh, what kind of war is fought when one side doesn't even have, you know, proper soldiers? They got a bunch of randos and flip-flops who have enough balls to shoot back. Trained since birth, watching, you know, propaganda and, you know, and of course they're starving because they're living in an open air prison. But this is not a proper army, is what I'm trying to get at. Hamas. It's a joke. It's a joke. They don't even know what to do with hostages. So to call it a war is a kind of a joke. But here we are. Like, the media wants, you know, can't oh, you know.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
It still works. But let's get to it. Civilian suffering in Gaza, eyewitness testimony from inside Ravage Enclave. I have better argument than that. Oh, do you? Even if it is a war, it's not justified legally. All of a sudden, look, I think that's great. The ICJ, I think all that's great. I agree with it, you know, but are we going to sit here and pretend like there's any teeth to any of that? That the West can't 100% ignore that for decades and not a single goddamn thing is going to happen? Geneva Conventions. This guy. Oh, this guy. How many people in the United States got roped up for breaking all those Geneva Conventions in Vietnam? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Can I come to Discord? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. You seem like trouble. Let's get to it. Eyewitness reports from Gaza. It's only eyewitness reports, so it's Hamas. It rejected. They're not even human.
In Arwa Damon, president and founder of Inara, a non-profit providing access to medical and mental health care to children impacted by war and natural disasters. Arwa was also former senior international correspondent with CNN. Arwa, thank you so much for joining us here.
It's great. Every time you go to Our World News and you see stuff like this on there, the comments are literally just, yeah, what about Hamas? That's what you get for supporting Hamas. That's what you get for, you know, like they'll be commenting under the picture of a dead kid, and they'd be like, that's what you get for supporting Hamas. Yeah, you know about it. It's the parents' fault. It's like, it's just pathetic. It's just pathetic. When you look at a dead kid and that's all you got to say about that, you're done, dude. You're toast. You're fucking, you're zonked out, man. You're fucking zonked.
On France 24, you were recently in Gaza. Tell us how you got in.
I got in on a humanitarian mission with my charity, Inara, to visit some of the 13 shelters that we're currently working with, but also to look at where and how to best set up medical points to be able to a certain degree, ease some of the burden on the hospitals, but also for people who have been discharged from hospital to be able to actually access things like wound cleaning, physical therapy, but also you have diseases that are running rampant throughout these camps, such as diarrhea, cholera, hepatitis A, children who are severely malnourished. And you have to realize that despite the image
Hey, no, Manar, don't be filling my chat with the fucking copy paste of the legal argument from the ICJ. We get it. Okay, if you, I was trying to engage with you and talk to you about how the West doesn't acknowledge the legitimacy of those courts. So you can legal argument all fucking day. The West is not going to see anything. So like, enough. Okay, dude, you're enough, dude. Jesus, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it one more time. Enough, or I'm gonna have to time your ass out. Okay, whatever, dude. All right. I need a break. I literally don't have the patience for it right now. So 10-minute timeout for you, dude. Moving on.
Images that we're seeing, one doesn't really understand exactly what densely populated means in the context of Gaza and Rafah until one has actually been there. I have never seen anything like this in my 20 years reporting from and or working in war zones. Just the sheer volume of people that is there, the way that shelters are packed and then tents spill out of shelters, cascading onto sidewalks, into the street. The sheer crush and volume of people that is there makes the notion of any sort of invasion into that area absolutely bone-chilling.
You know, it really is something to see people even trying to make, it is clear, it is obvious that Israel is intentionally targeting civilians. We're all just supposed to buy the tripe that this is the only way to eliminate terrorism, that this is the only way to go about it, is mass civilian casualties. Even the United States, didn't in this short amount of time kill this many civilians. It took them 7-8 years to get those numbers up. Yeah, no, he was annoying the shit out of me. 3-word sentences. We get it. It's illegal. I agree. I'm just suggesting pumping Hamas is a bad idea. No one's pumping Hamas. What are you fucking talking about? I just went on a fucking 10-minute tirade about how Hamas are, holding the fucking people of Israel, Palestine hostage. No one's pumping Hamas. But this terrorism strategy is counter fucking productive. I'm not going to support this shit that Hamas gets up to. I'm not talking about when they attack the IDF. I'm talking about when they go after civilians. What they've done to these hostages. The ones that weren't murdered by the IDF from the fucking bombs. All right. There you go. He's untimed out. My God. Sorry, I wasn't aware that you were enjoying the 3-word sentences flying by, drowning out everyone else. I wasn't aware of that, Amityville. I'm sorry. We'll continue with that. All right, hot dog, I'm sorry. I jumped in halfway. But yeah, this idea that Israel is not intentionally targeting civilians is absurd at this point. It's absurd. It's just as absurd as this idea that you can eliminate terrorism at the barrel of a gun. I'm with Russia now. Look, are you joking? Are you joking? Or are you being serious? Because I'm going to have to fucking ban you if you are. That is one thing that I really haven't talked about is Russia's relationship with Iran. And, the encouragement of, this crisis to benefit Russia's interests. Under Geneva, hey man, all right. I don't even need the source to agree with you, Manar. I don't even need the source to agree with you. But how much does that actually matter? What really matters is the 3-step program. Inform yourself, join a progressive activist political group, and then put in the work. Get out there, get in the streets, participate, donate your time and your money. That's the only thing that really creates change, not these international criminal courts that are hand waved away by the empires that are committing the crimes. It's important. It's important to keep this shit on record, to keep everyone honest, to have a real honest log. I think it's great. I don't want to do a destiny and completely dismiss the legitimacy of these bodies. But let's be real. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for letting me know who you are. Go ahead and fuck off, you piece of shit. Appreciate it. Gonna go ahead and bye. Bye, you fucking asshole. What am I supposed to keep you around too? We got a problem with that one, Amity? We got beef with that one too?
You just described scenes of what seemed like hell. You've been out for a few weeks now. What images still haunt you?
There's an image of a 10-year-old boy who was in the ICU at one of the hospitals. He had been shot in the head, and his father was by his side, just praying for his son to wake up. There's the image of a mother who thrust her limp baby towards us. You can see it right there on the screen, actually.
Yeah, Manar. Yeah, that is unquestionable. It's documented. It's on paper.
And she was just begging for help. She didn't know what to do. And walking into that particular tent, but it's the same in all of them. Every step you take just sends up clouds of mosquitoes and flies. There's no bathroom. There's no shower. There's no access to clean water. But then, there's also these other images that sort of stand out to me. And it's when you're able to catch these brief glimpses of the life that was and the people that were, my eye at one point caught two girls giggling off the back of a donkey cart. And I kind of breathed a sigh of, subconscious relief just to have been able to catch that moment.
No, history didn't start on October 7th. As much as the grifters seem to want us to think that, it's quite bizarre that we've just forgotten about the decades and decades of crime committed against the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. This idea that, in 2005 we left and we were just minding our own business is a total lie. It's a total lie. Yes, Amity. I am. I'm having a bad day. And I am. I mean, when it comes to, look, this is politics. This isn't PewDiePie. This is politics, Amity. Do you know how many bad actors, how many crypto fascists, how many, grifters of all different flavors come into this chat? Okay. This is a whole other level. Okay. Being in this chat is a privilege. It's not a fucking right. So you goddamn right I'm heavy-handed. I don't fucking waste time with fools. Do you like Ukraine? Yes, I support Ukrainians' democracy and I am against the Russian invasion. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Where are we at, man?
There's so much that really sticks with a person, but then also the overriding emotion being out is also just how gracious everybody is towards each other, but even towards us as outsiders, despite the needs that they have and how overwhelming that is. There's a certain grace and dignity that people are really holding on to that is just so admirable.
I love the fact that you told me about when you caught a glimpse of those two girls giggling, it brought a sigh of relief to you, because I wanted to ask you about what sense you got about the children there. Will they ever be able to recover from what they're seeing?
Recover might not be the right word. Will they be able to live with and be able to sort of lead productive lives where
this is in the reference that this is somehow ending or has ended, has ended.
able to live, love, and laugh to their full capacity? Yes, to a certain degree, but if and only if they get the medical and the mental health care that they need. I don't know if there is a sufficient appreciation to just the sort of depth of trauma that is being inflicted on people every single day, how that fear that one has within them living in this kind, specifically this kind of a war zone, with the unpredictability of the bombardment, the way that fear clutches and grips your chest and your throat, and how you don't have a chance to, in quotations, recover from this trauma because you're constantly being traumatized. At one point, a mother ran after me. She was staying in a tent somewhere else.
Reed Strader over there
and she grabbed my arm to tell me the story of how her 6-year-old boy every night would scream and convulse and rock back and forth every single night, and he'd been doing this for weeks, ever since he saw his younger sister decapitated when a bomb hit their house. And so, you see these various levels of trauma, but then you also do see, those glimmers of kids being kids, right? Like they chase after you when you're walking through the hospital and you kind of have to gently shoo them away. They play, they crack jokes, but it's also a child's way of coping, right? Because children can't cope with words. They have to be able to cope with play and other ways of expressing themselves. And then the adults, the severe trauma on an adult. I mean, ask anyone who has survived Gaza or who is still trying to live in Gaza, and they'll
it just doesn't stop. The horror doesn't stop. And the reason why it's consistent, it's a consistent pressure that needs to be kept up, is that they're not welcome there. They want them to go. They don't want them to feel safe. Israel
tell you that inside
does not want them to feel safe.
They're dead. Right now, Gazans are ghosts. They are zombies.
Arba, you've covered numerous conflicts during your years at CNN, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. How does what you saw in Gaza compared with those?
I always hesitate to compare, war zones. And across all war zones, the pain that war causes, the pain that losing everything, that made up your life.
I couldn't imagine.
That you loved, that you put so much of your life into, that always remains the same. The big difference, I think, when it comes specifically to Gaza goes back to that level of density of souls that you have in a place like Rafah. It's the lack of access to safe space. I mean, even if we look at, the battle against ISIS in Mosul that also took place in intensely, densely packed urban environment, there always came a point in time where if you survived up until that point in time, you could get out to safe space. Just about every single war that I can think of, eventually, even though access to safe space may have been dangerous, there was always that option to be able to get to it. Gazans do not have that option.
Where do you go?
The borders are closed. They are being massacred and bombarded on a regular basis. Humanitarian aid cannot reach them, and this is something that is also different. Humanitarian organizations are on the ground in Gaza, and yet humanitarian aid is not getting into the volume it needs to be getting in at, nor is there the capacity to distribute it, quite simply because deconfliction isn't working. And then let's look at one more key difference that is well worth mentioning. The vast majorities of wars in the past were not, or did not rather, have one party to them be a democratically elected nation state that is being supported by the world's largest superpower.
Indeed. And we have seen those efforts to bring more aid fall on deaf ears despite calls from Washington, etc. I want to talk about how
fall on deaf ears. Like France maybe. It's funny, right? Because we got it's so funny how they dance around the Western consensus on this. To put it lightly, Guy.
War in Gaza compares to other conflicts because when it comes to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we had, schools that were targeted. But here in Gaza, we have seen hospitals that have come under siege, schools that have been blown up, food essentially being used as a weapon of war. But then we have officials who dance around what is happening in Gaza, not using the right terminology. How frustrating is this for you, especially someone who is working now in the humanitarian sector?
It's frustrating, and it's also quite despicable because it really brings to the fore how certain lives are perceived as being worth more than others. And this is a fundamental issue, though, when it comes to Palestine and Israel. Palestinians have constantly, for decades,
it's just accepted. It's just accepted as common sense. What do you mean? They're savages. It's insane.
Now, for some absurd, illogical reason, had to make the case that they too are human, and that's just a notion that is very difficult to wrap one's mind around. And if we look at other wars in our recent history, so if we look at Russia and the war in Ukraine, if we look at the regime of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's war on his own people, backed also by the Russians, we actually see very similar tactics to what Israel is using right now in Gaza, and that is cutting off or laying siege to a chunk of the population, or in the case of Gaza, the entire population. We see indiscriminate bombing of hospitals and schools and other, key locations that should not be targeted underneath the Geneva Convention. And we see a lack of proper access of humanitarian aid to those areas. And I think, and there's a big reluctance to do this, but what we're seeing right now has to force certain countries and certain people to take a hard look at themselves and ask, do they truly have a bias towards people that do not look like them?
Yeah. I remember people being like, what, we're still in Afghanistan? When Joe Biden was saying, announced that we were pulling out. People, the normalization of the apartheid state in the West Bank. This idea that, just because, we helped with one apartheid, that that we're against all of them. Like I said, the only thing that really is going to solve this issue is the 3-step program. That's just political activism. Become politically active. Not just politically informed, but politically active. Okay? It's not as fun as being sexually active. Sorry. I know. You can get laid being politically active. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you that it's not hard work. But this idea that an international body, it's illegal under this international law, a lot of, okay, sure, that's great. That's fine. And like I said, that's important. We need these bodies to, especially at the very least, just to keep track of what is and isn't real and what is and isn't a crime. So they're very important. Like I said, I'm not doing a destiny, but at the same time, what are we going to sit here and ignore the fact that they are like literally easily hand waved away as mere curiosities by the people that are committing the crimes? Well, no, Gizzard, I disagree with that. I disagree with this retribution narrative. I think the settlers should return the land to the 1967 borders, but I don't want to see any more people die. So if you would mind not breaking TOS in my chat, I would appreciate that, Gizzard. Moving on to the next clip. Israel says moving ahead with Rafah operation in Gaza, so they're moving ahead with it. Like I said, I'm not sure what they're going to do. Going to kill tens of thousands of people with a bunch of airstrikes. I don't know what the fuck they're going to do. What does this mean? Are they going to, like I said, what I'm trying to predict. Yeah, no problem, Gizzard. What I hope what I'm predicting is that they're going to go in surgically with a bunch of boots on the ground, try to avoid as many airstrikes as possible, hopefully, to avoid mass casualty events, declare victory against Hamas, and then give Rafah to Egypt. Just hand that bitch over to Egypt, and then push everyone else from the Gaza Strip into Rafah. Maybe do that first, and then give it over to Egypt. But I think that's the game plan, because Bibi Netanyahu is well aware that a massive genocide is, hard even for him, even for Joe Biden to defend. So he wants to avoid casualties. Meanwhile, Ben-Gvir is, what are we doing? What are we doing? How come we haven't dropped bombs already on every inch of Rafah? So, he's got to keep that contingent in control, because he understands that Ben-Gvir does not care about the West, does not care about the West support. It's okay if he loses it. He does not understand. He's an extremist. He doesn't understand even if he does understand the political ramifications of Israel doing a full-blown killing hundreds of thousands of people. Even if he does understand it, he's okay with. He thinks Israel is strong enough to do it alone. The nationalist POV that they're superior in every way. That the support is nice, the support helps, but we ultimately don't need it to sustain ourselves, which is a total lie. But anyway, like I said, I think Bibi Netanyahu, as monstrous as this whole operation has been, I think he does understand the devastating PR of killing hundreds of thousands of people that he corralled into one location. So I think they're going to try to avoid a genocide by giving over Rafah. At least that's what I hope, because the alternative is even more horrific. What, create a humanitarian disaster on the border and hope there's chaos and then everyone runs into Egypt? That doesn't seem like that's very easy to engineer. That's like supervillain shit. Ozymandias kind of shit.
Let's go straight to Jerusalem. Iris Makler is live with us. Iris, what can you tell us then about this reporting regarding Rafah? Does it seem the offensive long talked about?
A lot of women reporting today. I love to see it. A lot of great reporting from women today. Loving it.
Is now going to happen?
I have also heard those reports, is the most I can say, because in fact this has been being reported for 3 months. But what we have now seen is that Israel, which had withdrawn units, brigades, battalions from the Gaza Strip, has called up 2 reserve battalions for service in Rafah. I've heard that from the IDF, and I met somebody who was in that brigade who could confirm to me he had been called up. So yes, there is an indication that Israel may go into Rafah. That's another ground operation, even though it's actually removed most of its troops from the south and the centre of the Gaza Strip. So that's one possibility. We have also seen during the past 24 to 48 hours an increase in fire. That's rocket fire from Gaza into Israel, from the north of the Gaza Strip into Israel. Palestinian Islamic Jihad, one of the militant groups directly attached to Iran, has claimed responsibility for that. We've seen return fire from Israel, both in the north to the source of that fire, and in the south. We hear reports from the south.
I don't think Israel's going to give them a choice. That's the thing, Clutch. They're just going to hand it over and build a wall and then just start treating it like it's Egypt. It's wild. It's wild. But what else do you do? If you want to, if the goal is to avoid a genocidal incident, what else are you going to do? You could engineer a famine, create a bunch of chaos. You could do all that, but how many people are going to die? It's kind of brilliant. Just hand it over, whether they want it or not. Build a wall and just start treating it like Egypt.
Palestinians in Rafah saying that it's been relentless for the past 24 hours. That's airstrikes and shelling. They say the heaviest shelling for weeks.
Well, Iris, just sort of highlighting what it is you've been saying there as we've been on air within the last few minutes or so. A spokesperson for the Israeli government saying Israel is now, and I quote, moving ahead with an assault on Hamas in Rafah. So that confirming what you've been hearing as well.
Jesus Christ.
Now, at the meantime, Iris, it's important to talk about what else is going on elsewhere in Gaza, in the north, in the centre of the enclave. we're hearing that Hamas may be returning to some areas that the Israeli troops had cleared those fighters from. Tell us about that reporting. What have you been hearing?
Yes, I've been hearing and I've been seeing images of Palestinians returning to their homes, cleaning up, sweeping up. That's people from Khan Yunis and also from the north, although they have to cross an Israeli cordon to get to the north. But from the center, they're returning. And who is...
Clutch, the Hamas members don't wear fatigues. They don't have insignia. They look like civilians. How in the world could you tell the difference between a Hamas fighter? They don't all wear like the stereotypical Middle Eastern terrorist garb. A lot of them look like this guy, except put a gun in his hand. Now he's Hamas. What do you do with that?
Doing the sweeping and who is in charge of the cleaning? Hamas officials have returned to do that. So I have been hearing Israeli military analysts saying that without a plan for the day after, that plan that Washington has been asking for really almost since the first day of this military conflict, certainly from the first day of this ground offensive, without a plan, if there's a vacuum, then Hamas steps back in and starts taking charge again, starts reimposing its control on civilians who might actually have a different view of Hamas now than they do, a different view of Hamas now after October the 7th than they did before. But because there's no plan,
they're not going to let them go north. The whole goal was to get them out of the north. They're not going to sanction having them. They're already trickling north, as this lady was saying here. They're already trickling north. But the reason they can't just shoot people on sight because it's bad for PR. But they're not going to be able to stay. But they don't have a place to put them besides Rafah. They need a solution to all this. That doesn't include giving back parts of the Gaza Strip, because the moment they do, Hamas comes back. Because there is no defeating an ideology. The only way you could defeat Hamas is by treating the Palestinians like human beings. Can't do that. That's off the table. Yeah, he says that he'll throw these statements out like that, Klitschko. We reported on that a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I remember him saying something like that. But honestly, I think what he's just saying is he's setting up a, oh well, see, that's what we wanted to try. See, that's what we wanted, but we couldn't. These savages, we extended the hand of friendship and they wouldn't let us do it. All it'll take is one single rocket out of Gaza City. So yeah, he did make that statement.
And that's what I've heard military analysts here saying. They say, yes, there are 4 battalions, the IDF says there are 4 battalions of Hamas fighters that should be cleared out of Rafah. That's right. Let's say you take that as read, you say that it's important to do it. It's not going to change the outcome of this war, really, is the counter argument. And it's not going to bring the hostages back. So the 2 aims that Israel had for this war, the return of the hostages and the removal of Hamas from power, it has not seemed to be able to achieve. So what you
I read that article from that right-wing Israeli from Haaretz, and he went into it. He said, we're not going to achieve any of our goals. We've failed. And that was from a hardcore right-winger who is happy to dehumanize Palestinians for the goals. But if I think what he would prefer is for people just to admit what the real goal is: ethnic cleansing and the take over the Gaza Strip.
You see is enormous sorrow, enormous suffering, and swimming around in circles.
Iris Makler, injury.
Yeah, but the goal was to eliminate Hamas and get the hostages back, and yeah, that's not happened. That is not happening. So yeah, I'm not gonna play this whole 20-minute Owen Jones clip here, but he's doing really well. He's really on fire, and I wanted to show more of him. And he's talking about the lie that has destroyed UNRWA. Go figure. Israel has yet to provide any actual proof. They were claiming, well, this person's from Hamas. This person worked with Hamas. We have all kinds of evidence that top leadership, doctors, and all these other entities that were working for UNRWA were also secret Hamas agents. And they have yet to actually provide a shred of evidence. And the West has already, they've just like, okay, guilty, before proven innocent, you're guilty. We don't have to prove anything. Guilty. The UK, the United States went along very quickly, by the way, to eliminate funding for UNRWA. And of course, UNRWA just so happens to be the welcome back strategy. Good to see you. UNRWA, of course, just happens to be one of the largest aid agencies providing support for the Gazans. And then, of course, soon after that, successful defunding of UNRWA, we saw the attacks on the World Central Kitchen. There's been some really successful gaslighting I've seen. Now they're trying to say, oh well, that was actually Hamas doing that because they want people to hate the IDF. They want people to hate Israel, so they do that intentionally. Of course, there's that famous picture of the circle in the roof of the World Central Kitchen truck from the extremely precise United States provided cruise missile that went into the vehicle. But no, of course, that was Hamas. Bad Boys 45. Wow, that is embarrassing. You got the glasses and everything, huh? You got the glasses and everything. You want to just go ahead and try to, throw out the N-word? You're going to have to spell it weird. If you could just maybe just, spell the N-word weird and throw that in the chat so I can just go ahead and give you the flush. I get it. You're going to, you want your dictatorship. You're going to be the dog that catches his own tail, though, if you were to get it. This idea that this dictatorship is going to help you pathetic bootlickers, that Donald Trump is going to extend his mercy to you. It's just pathetic. The Germans have already reinstituted UNRWA funding. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more of that. But but Israel now, because of this lie, how's the trial going? Welcome back, Suspect Blaming. But because of this lie, and we've seen this before, like Israel will make up a lie and the whole world will be like, okay, that's a total lie. You made that shit up. Okay. Hey, bad boy, what is the number one thing that you're looking forward to in the Trump administration once he becomes president? What is the policy that is going to, really help you in your life? If you could just let me know, bad boys. All right, so let's border. You live in a border town, huh? You live close to that border, huh? Living on the border there, the old Texas border. Close enough. Yeah, is it? Are you close enough? Can you give me a single example of how illegal immigration has affected you personally? Would you mind Mr. Bad Boy, would you mind giving me just a single example of how these dirty, dangerous immigrants have affected your life? They're dangerous. They're bringing over the fentanyl. They're rapists. Right? Dangerous guys. Where are we at? Come on. Bad boy. Number one issue. Border. Number one issue. Surely you have, because for me, one of my number one issues is the price of fucking food. You know what I mean? Because food affects my life. I go to the store and I buy food like every single day. I'm a big old fatty like you. The border? I mean, I don't like how things are going down there in terms of these loopholes that are encouraging people to risk their lives. Bad boys, I asked you a question, buddy. Oh, we're not gonna. There he goes. Came out of the mist. Bad boys, we're not going to move on. I would like an example. It's your number one issue. It affects you. It's day to day, right? You can't. It's in your face. The rapists, the drug dealers that are coming across. It's a crisis. So it's your number one issue. So please tell me, day to day, man, give me one of those day-to-day examples. Illegal immigrant committed a crime against your family. There was a dishwashing job that you really wanted that was taken by an illegal immigrant. There was a fruit picking job, some kind of kitchen, kitchen cook job that you really wanted that was taken by an illegal immigrant. Can you give me a single example of how your number one issue is affecting your life? I just want a single example of how your number one political issue is affecting your day-to-day. Like I said, I got my issues: really high food, really high fuel, really high cost of living generally, rent and mortgage, all that. Really low wages. Really low wages. Where are you at? Where are you at? It's your number one issue, the border. Where the hell you at? All right. Moving on. You think you'd have more to say about his number one issue? They're coming over here illegally. They're brown and dirty. They're rapists and drug dealers. Surely you can give me an example of how this crisis is affecting your day-to-day.
Of all the lies peddled by the Israeli state since this horror began, this one has proven the most murderous. Indeed, it has been a key plank of what makes this a genocidal campaign against Gaza. Now, cast your mind back to January when the International Court of Justice, that's the world's highest court, placed Israel on trial for alleged genocide, declaring it to be a plausible case. Now, at the exact same time, just coincidentally, a story driven by the Israeli state knocks that news from the headlines. It's centered on the United Nations Relief and Work.
And you know what? I'm sure some people will be like, "Oh, what do you mean? You got no proof? You got no proof? It's just a conspiracy theory." And bad boys, buddy, I gave you an opportunity to answer my question. You sit there in silence like a cucked ass bitch.
Oh, baby.
Like a cucked ass bitch, you sit there in silence, and then you meekly say something else when you want to start some shit with somebody. Get the fuck out my chat, bitch boy. Get the fuck out of my chat. See you later, bitch. See you later. Oh, I don't have a day-to-day example of how my number one issue affects me, but I still want to troll people in your chat. How about no, bitch? Yeah, Strat, and let's not even bother arguing with their fucking talking points. They don't even comprehend. They don't even know, you know what I mean? They don't comprehend them. They don't really know what they believe in. It's just a bunch of fucking gotcha talking points that they reflexively regurgitate. Homie, what are you sleeping on the couch? Owen Jones over here. He's in the doghouse. He's sleeping on the couch, man. All right, let's get back to it.
Works Agency of Palestine.
No, back to this though. The timing. I do think this timing is interesting, and I've seen, and we've seen this quite a bit. Big nasty world central kitchen stories out there, and then boom, Israel will have some allegation or some proof, something, some story cooked up and ready to go. That then takes over the news cycle, and Tapper Jake is all too happy to introduce the distraction into the narrative. Now, that isn't to say you shouldn't report on things, but the way that the mainstream media works, it's one or the other. It's one direction or the other, and savvy empires know how to manipulate that. It looks like comfy couch. You're right. Chem Goblin, you're always glass half full, buddy. You gotta love this guy. Give it up for Chem Goblin, Mr. Positive in a gloomy world. He's our Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Thank you so much, Chem Goblin.
Exact same time, just coincidentally, a story driven by the Israeli state knocks that news from the headlines. It's centered on the United Nations Relief and Works Agency of Palestine refugees in the Near East, better known by its acronym, UNRWA. Founded in 1949, shortly after the foundation of Israel, it was charged with the welfare of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees driven from their homes in the so-called Nakba, or catastrophe, the term for this act of ethnic cleansing. It continued to look after those refugees and their descendants, and indeed new refugees driven from their homes in subsequent acts of ethnic cleansing orchestrated by Israel, not least in 1967. And today it's got around 30,000 employees operating in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, in the West Bank, and of course Gaza, working with around 6 million registered Palestinian refugees. In Gaza, it's the main humanitarian agency, with around 13,000 employees running schools and healthcare and other core services. Now, in the midst of humanitarian catastrophe, defined by mass indiscriminate bombing, the destruction of healthcare, siege, famine, the lack of shelter, hygiene, we could go on, it is therefore a lifeline. Yet Israel has long despised UNRWA because it is a continuing reminder of the mass expulsion of Palestinians from their homes, that they have been refugees and are refugees, that the United Nations Resolution 194 granted the right of return to such refugees. It exists as a constant reminder that Israel is an occupying power, and as a result, it has a very clear legal set of obligations.
And let's not forget, historically, Israel has very, very, very rarely respected the right to return with an extremely small amount of people. Tens of hundreds of thousands, I believe, of Palestinians have lost their homes, and the right to return isn't even really talked about anymore as a legitimate reason. Really, when the settlers are brought up, it's basically just a solemn, yeah, it's definitely illegal, it's definitely bad. Okay, moving on. You know, when's the last time you've seen anybody of legitimacy, any government representative or anything, say they're going to do anything substantive about the land grabs? That happen every month, by the way. Israel has been announcing new settlements almost every month in the West Bank.
Israel flouts. UNRWA is also seen by certainly Israeli figures as instrumental in maintaining a Palestinian identity which they want to snuff out. Now, the truth is that Palestinian identity will remain whether UNRWA exists or not. But destroying UNRWA undoubtedly helps dismantle the very fabric of Palestinian society. Indeed, UNRWA also provides huge amounts of information about the actual consequences of Israeli crimes, something else, of course, Israel wants to end. Now, since this horror began, Israel has slaughtered huge numbers of UNRWA staff, making it the biggest mass killing of UN workers and indeed aid workers in any conflict in such a short space of time ever recorded. Of course, none of those aid workers got even a fraction of the attention received when foreign aid workers were killed by Israel, not to distract, of course, or detract from the horror of that. Now, furthermore, as northern Gaza in particular collapsed into famine, Israel banned UNRWA from entering at all. Self-evidently itself genocidal implications. You drag a civilian population into humanitarian catastrophe entirely artificially, then you wage war on the main agency which can protect them. So when the International Court of Justice issued its provisional orders, one of the most fundamental being that Israel must allow access to humanitarian aid, the Israeli state declared that UNRWA was complicit in the 7th of October attacks, specifically claiming 12 of its employees were directly involved in the attack. Now, frankly, on its own terms, this whole claim, this smear campaign, was an absurdity, even if true. If 12 out of 30,000 employees were involved in a crime, and we don't know what the specific alleged...
You know, and UNRWA, of course, reacted immediately, firing these people without cause. Just, okay, fine, all right, no proof, whatever, we'll play along. But it wasn't about that. It wasn't about these 12 individuals. It was about, like Owen Jones here is setting up. It's about eliminating the legitimacy of this organization because it is, not only does it provide and sustain the Palestinians and allow them to, resist, even passively resist. But it's also, by registering all these people as refugees, they're in a way keeping track of the crimes of Israel, and they don't like that.
Alleged involvement, or the extent of that involvement even was supposed to be, you don't thereby strangle an entire agency. You'd have to shut down every agency and organization on earth on that basis, because you'll always find individuals in any organization who've done terrible things. I mean, the National Health Service has been shut down for Harold Shipman, for example. Now, there's also a presumption of innocence until guilt is proven. But the head of UNRWA sacked 10 of those 12 employees on the spot. He couldn't sack the other 2 because they'd already been killed in this bloodbath. Now, he thought, Philip Lazzarini, he thought that he would protect UNRWA by throwing them under a bus with no due process. But clearly, to be frank, that was obviously not someone who understands crisis management. It just added fuel to the fire. The Israeli state went further, though. They claimed widespread infiltration of UNRWA by members of terrorist organisations and also reheated old claims, for example, that in UNRWA schools, children are being brainwashed, for example, to hate Jewish people. There was also, for example, the claims, not least in the words of the now sacked, but then official Israeli spokesperson Elon Levy, that UNRWA was a front for Hamas. Not infiltrated, just a front for Hamas. Yeah. This obviously put a target on the back of anyone working for UNRWA. But crucially, it led to multiple countries.
I do recall at the height of the murder, there was a time where the marked vehicles that they started to hide their markings. You know, they would usually have, you know, vehicles with big bright markings on. I believe there was a time where they were covering those markings because of how frequently they were being targeted.
To cut their funding to UNRWA. The largest, of course, being the United States, and the House of Representatives last month passed a bill banning funding for UNRWA until at least the beginning of 2025. That is stripping UNRWA of between $300 and $400 million each year. Another country which cut funding was the United Kingdom, as well as Canada and Australia and the EU, though since the likes of the EU, Canada, Australia, Japan, France have restored funding, that only after the damage was done. Indeed, $450 million or so of its funding was slashed altogether. Utterly devastating. Huge numbers of Palestinians being killed and suffering through bombing, bullets, starvation, lack of medical care, lack of fresh water, lack of shelter, lack of hygiene. We could go on. And the main funding, and the funding for the main humanitarian agency, was butchered. Now, the UN Secretary General commissioned an independent detailed report by the former French Foreign Minister, Catherine Colonna. Now, the results, well, firstly, we can note that Israel had failed to offer any supportive evidence of its specific claims about employees being taking part on the 7th of October. Now, I should say that's a parallel review specifically looking into that, but the Israeli state is refusing to cooperate, which is totally normal behaviour if you've got slam dunk evidence. But this review is about UNRWA's neutrality, and it highlights that UNRWA regularly gave Israel lists of its employees for Israel to vet, and that the Israeli government has not informed UNRWA of any concerns relating to...
You get it. You get it. They're not Hamas infiltrated. You know, they're not a cover for Hamas. They're, you know, they're giving full transparency over to Israel. The motivations are not Hamas, and they're, you know, ironically, Hamas are the useful idiots in all of this, because this isn't even about terrorism. This is not about eliminating Hamas. This isn't about saving hostages. It's really hard. It's really hard for a lot of so-called professionals to admit that, even though it's right in front of their face. And what's interesting is that at any time, Bibi Netanyahu could just like stop this, and then everything, all the falsehoods would become true in a way. All the lies would become true if he just stops. And imagine if he just stops and hands over Rafah to Egypt. Is that even possible? Like, I know, of course, Egypt would say, well, we don't want it. We don't agree with it. But Israel just kind of draws a border. Is there any example in history of that happening? Of another country handing over like an ethnic region over to a different country against their will? That seems like something that might have happened throughout history. A very specific set of circumstances, but say you have like a region that is inhabited mostly by an ethnic minority of some sort. You don't want to kill them all because that's bad for business. So you hand over that enclave over to that country, whether they want it or not. And then you just pretend there's got to be some analog. As I say, they're handing it over doesn't mean it'll actually be part of that country. Well, not right away, but that doesn't matter. that doesn't really matter. Because if the West goes along with it, it will become real. You don't need, it's bizarre, right? But you really don't need Egypt's permission more than you need Joe Biden's permission. That's how fucked up the geopolitical situation is. But if you can get the United States to go along with it, then the UK will eventually go along with it. Then Canada will eventually go along with it. And then Bob's your uncle. It's real. Whether Egypt wants it or not. And they'll put up a little statue, and they'll put up a little plaque, or they'll put up a little museum that says this land was forcefully put upon us, and blah blah blah. The West did this, the West did that. I'm not, it's all true. All the crimes will be true, but it's like how many times do these empires get away with that? Like the crimes committed in Vietnam, right? Now it's just a tourist attraction. It's we've learned nothing, and now it's a tourist attraction. All right, so moving on to my next clip here. These are much shorter clips. EU joins calls for probe into mass graves in Gaza hospitals. So looking at history, that'd be the African colonies as an example for areas being given to people even though they had no cultural agreements, not spoke the same original language. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because I'm sure it would have something to do with ethnicity or religion, Yeah, so EU joins calls to probe in the mass graves of Gaza hospitals. So, Davey, the right-wing contrarian that that is the only honest actor or right-winger that I think we've ever interacted with, did make a good point that we don't know 100% if these mass graves were a mass execution of innocent civilians, or if this was a mass grave that was set up by the hospital for all the dead people that the hospital had to bury. Regardless, whether it was a mass grave after a mass execution or a mass grave from dead bodies that were created from the war, Israel is still guilty. It's definitely Israel's fault. So this whole we should wait and see, wait for the investigation, kind of plays into the IDF's playbook, Israel's playbook, which is always, we're investigating ourselves on that one. Oh yeah, that was a big boo-boo. We'll get back to you on the World Central Kitchen. We'll get back to you on that one. Oh yeah, that was a big no-no. And then 6 months later, a small little blurb in the Jerusalem Times. Oh, by the way, we investigated ourselves for that crime 6 months ago, and we're totally innocent. Thanks, bye. Literally, that's what you'll get, dude. A total. Oh, somebody was slapped on the wrist and fined. So this whole wait and see, or we should not jump to conclusions. It's generally a good idea though for the left to not jump to conclusions, because it's so easy to shit on the left, to vilify the left. When we jump to conclusions and we're wrong. One of those conclusions that I like, and I know this is hard to talk about because it's kind of parallel agrees with destiny in a way, but is this knee-jerk reaction to call this a genocide. It kind of feeds into our enemy's narrative that we're hysterical and that we're not, we're not being honest. I agree. It's a pedantic technicality. What's the difference? But at the same time, I do think, it's not a genocide yet. It has all the makings of a genocide. It's one finger snap away and you could easily turn this into a genocide. But we're not there quite yet. Why not? Oh my God, really? The amount of death. The amount of death. There's a big difference between, because what is the definition of genocide? Let's just look it up. The deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim. So this is the important part. This is where I don't think this is a genocide yet. With the aim of destroying that nation or group. we're there. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet. We're really close. We're really, really close to this. But until we see the mass executions that we saw, the atrocities that we saw in World War II, what are they going to, that's the question, right? Because like this question could be answered by the Rafah operation, how they handle it. Did we genocide ISIS? No. Because ISIS doesn't exist as a nation. We're not there because Israel says we're not. No. We're not there because Israel hasn't decided what it's going to do with the Palestinians and what it's going to do with the Gaza Strip yet. Because we could be shouting genocide. Then Bibi Netanyahu immediately makes us all wrong by, letting people back into the Gaza Strip and then pulling out. So I do think but it's, once again, it is pedantic though. It is a bit pedantic because you could argue that this is destroying the nation, that this is an attempt to destroy the group. Wow, Chem Goblin, really? Fuck you. I didn't say that at all. What the fuck? It really, I guess, but I guess your earlier comment about, Israel defining what, has an opportunity to define what this is. I guess that's kind of true in a way, because this is up to Israel. This is about what they do with these people in Rafah, what they do with the Gaza Strip, and what they do with the West Bank. So here's the thing. If Israel completes the complete erasure of the West Bank and then kicks everybody out of the Gaza Strip, and puts up a wall around Rafah and gives it over to Egypt, that's a genocide. They've destroyed a nation or group. They've destroyed a nation. That's a genocide. If Israel allows Palestine to exist in this kind of partial limbo existence, I guess technically, pedantically, yeah, you could say, because it's like, well, Palestine doesn't really technically exist as a nation. They can't really make decision. They don't even get to fish in their own waters. No, it's just, the knee-jerk reaction to call it a genocide, when right now I'm more comfortable calling it an ethnic cleansing. But it is, but I guess you're right, Chem Goblin, in that it is kind of up to Israel right now in that how they determine how they're handling Rafah is going to determine whether this is a genocide or not. Rafah and the West Bank, but the West Bank is slow. Settlements, the apartheid laws, the previous will, what else it is but genocide. Attempted genocide, yeah, that maybe would be more. Now, see, we're getting even more pedantic with it. But an attempted genocide, no, and an ethnic cleansing yeah, I mean, you can do an ethnic cleansing without necessarily destroying a nation. You can just ethnically cleanse a region, but that nation still exists. We've seen that happen, unfortunately, many times throughout history. So there is a difference there, but we're getting in the weeds. What is this fucking, Destiny? This fucking Destiny hour? Is this the Destiny show? Is this what we're doing? Right? I don't know. So I shouldn't have even brought it up because it's not that big a deal. But it is just, once again, it plays into our enemy, the right. It plays into their narrative that we're not serious and that we're hysterical and everyone's a Nazi and, that we're not using terms correctly. They, of course, don't respect language at all. So, that sucks. But that's the burden of the left, isn't it? Is that we have to work within reality. We have to work within the confines of what is and isn't real. Cleanse Ukraine of anything, Ukraine's full of Russians, keep it Ukraine, and it wouldn't be a genocide. No, that would be a genocide because you're just it's a different nation. You're just calling it the same thing. That's definitely still a genocide. You can't get away with a genocide on a technicality like that. Is this like Gremlins? Is this like the Mogwai rules? It's 12 o'clock somewhere. No, you can't genocide a region and then just name it the same, slap the same label on it, and it's all good. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I think right now it's pedantically arguable that it is technically a genocide, but it doesn't really matter to the fucking people on the ground, does it? So let's get to it.
The European Union has backed a call from the UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk for an independent investigation into the hundreds of bodies discovered at the hospitals destroyed in Israeli military operations.
We are gravely concerned by the reported discovery of mass graves in Khan Yunis and in Al-Shifa hospital. This is something that forces us to call for an independent investigation of all the suspicions and all the circumstances, because indeed it creates the impression that there might have been violations of international human rights committed. That's why it's important to have independent investigation and to ensure the accountability.
Willem Marx joins us now live.
Wow, look at the jawline on this son of a bitch, dude. Oh my God, I'm fucking wetting my pants. I disagree with Woke Patriot, but only technically, which is like, who fuck, come on. Totally in a pedantic way. So it's not, to me, that's not a real victory. That's not like I'm just obsessed with this jawline. Oh my God. Do you think he does the jaw exercises?
From London. And Willem, what do we think the impact of this demand for an independent investigation on Israel might be?
Well, Nick, I've reached out to the Israeli military to find out whether they'd be prepared to facilitate independent investigators. I've not heard back from them. I also reached out to the Israeli Prime Minister's office for a response or comment on this demand from the European Union. No response over the last hour or so. Historically, they've not been enthusiastic about independent investigators operating inside Gaza, and what they've often said is that because there are ongoing military operations, it would be too dangerous for that to happen. The mechanics for the EU to enforce this demand for an independent investigation are
I think attempted genocide is accurate. That's totally accurate. Because we can't see into the future. All we can see is what we can see on the ground. And what do we see on the ground? A complete disregard for the nation of Palestine. This is not an attempt to go after Hamas and remove terrorism. This is bigger than that. So attempted genocide is fair. At the moment, we won't know. We won't know what this is until we see the end. But it's too late if we get to the end. So I get it. I kind of get both sides here. I'm kind of being a total asshole, like fence sitter over here. So I think attempted genocide is totally accurate, though, because all we have is what we can see, and what we can see is not an anti-terrorist operation. It's not an anti-terrorist operation in the West Bank, and it's not an anti-terrorist operation in the Gaza Strip.
Clear, reaching out to the spokesperson you just heard from there, Peter Stano. He said this was often the requirement the EU made. They would like to see independent investigations of any number of issues, but they didn't have a specific body in mind that would carry those out. They did point us, though, to comments yesterday from Josep Borrell, the senior diplomat for the European Union, speaking to the European Parliament, in which he talked about that World Central Kitchen strike several weeks ago, in which Israel acknowledged responsibility.
Well, deal with it, crawl on the wall, because that's what we got to deal with, okay? Labels are an unfortunate reality of politics. You can't focus too much on them, but we can't just be willy-nilly defining everything as everything either, Can't have either.
He acknowledged it was a grave error, and he said it raised questions as to how often that had happened before without there being the intense spotlight placed on Israel in relation to other events, Nick.
Crawl on the wall, would you argue that Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States is an unimportant text, is something that is, nice to have, but not very important? Crawl on the wall. Would you argue that? Surely you wouldn't, right? Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States shows us, in specifics about what actually happened to the Native Americans, what actually happened in the Civil War, specifically using terms that describe those events specifically. That's what. So the specifics of these words and the meaning of words achieves the ability for us to understand truly where we come from and where we're moving forward. So are we really going to sit here in the chat and argue the importance of linguistics? Yeah, I mean, rating one above the other, it's less about that, and it's for me, it's more of just about accurate reporting from a journalistic standpoint, so that I'm giving people an accurate picture of this. We can't really call it a genocide until we see the ending here, really, because it's until the nation or group is destroyed. I think attempted genocide, though, is perfectly fair. Talk numbers then. Really? That's what you want? Or percentages? Okay, crawl on the wall. Moving on. Thank you so much, honey.
All right, Willem, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks a lot to Willem Moxer in London.
God, he's sexy. Yeah. Yeah, you better zoom in. You see, that producer knew what was going on.
Thanks a lot to Willem Moxer in London.
Full screen him. Okay, yeah, we want to cut on that jawline. Oh, my God. Look at those dreamy eyes in that jawline. Jesus Christ, I'm falling in love. All right, we got this really interesting Democracy Now! Interview. Democracy Now! Been following this very closely, even though they're playing games with pseudo defending Russia in weird ways, with weird interviews with weird people that are totally discredited, but we're going to pretend like they're legitimate because they're saying stuff what we'd like to hear, maybe. But with all that said, they're still Democracy Now! They still do some really great reporting. Still the best 10-minute headline segment in any news organization anywhere. No organization does a better, tighter 10-minute headline segment than Democracy Now! So, but goddamn, Scott Ritter. Why you got to be quoting Scott Ritter, Amy Goodman? I had to take a Democracy Now! Break after I saw that one. Oh man, why?
I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Months ago, a State Department panel urged the Biden administration to disqualify multiple Israeli military and police units from receiving U.S. aid over serious human rights abuses, including rape and torture. That's according to an article in ProPublica, which reports that Secretary of State Blinken received the recommendation in December, but has still not taken any action. We're joined now by Brett Murphy, reporter for ProPublica, where his latest pieces are Netanyahu resists U.S. plan to cut off aid to Israeli military unit, and Blinken is sitting on staff recommendations to sanction Israeli military units linked to killings or rapes. Brett, welcome back to Democracy Now! So this latest piece, lay out what is this State Department?
Crawl on the wall, that is not the motivation. You're saying we talk as if one qualifies as worth taking action over opposed to the other. That's not what we're advocating for. A real progressive leftist would advocate for the end of all wars, the end of all ethnic cleansings and genocides equally, regardless really of their definition, which kind of reflects why the left is so willing to be so laissez-faire with a term like genocide, because like what you're saying, what's the difference? What's the ethnic cleansing, genocide? What's the difference? People are suffering. We got to stop it. Call it whatever you want. Quit jerking off. Let's get to the real solution. So no, that's not what we're talking about. So please don't claim that that's where I'm coming from or where woke patriots coming from. That's certainly not where the left is coming from. That we're trying to rate our genocides and figure out which one we actually care about. That's insane.
Department panel that made this recommendation and talk about what Blinken has done since.
Yeah, it's a very special panel. It's unique to Israel. Other countries do not have this sort of consideration, and what it's supposed to do is review allegations of a gross human rights violation. That could be an extrajudicial killing, that could be a rape, and they look at public reports and then they see if the Israeli government has held the individual perpetrators accountable. If they haven't held them accountable, then they're supposed to make a recommendation to either stop giving aid to that specific unit or to continue allowing aid to go to that unit. This has never happened in the history of Israel. Almost every other country where we give foreign assistance to, they have units who are disqualified from that type of aid, but not Israel. Finally, this happened in December. For the first time ever, recommendations went up to Blinken to sanction-specific units inside of the Israeli military, but for months now, he has not done anything with those recommendations.
And Brett, could you talk about
what the Biden administration would prefer for this to all just be talk, and then Bibi Netanyahu does what they want, and then they can just make all this go away later on. They don't really want to seriously do this, but this is the neoliberal. Oh, okay, well, all right, not the whole military, just one of the really bad groups, and not really though. That's what they really want. They would like to make this all go away because they don't want to do this.
One of those units, Netza Yehuda, the country's all-male, ultra-Orthodox battalion?
Yeah, so there's been some reporting over the weekend that one of the units that went to Blinken was Netza Yehuda. This is an ultra-Orthodox all-male battalion. It had been operating largely in the West Bank for years. It was founded around 1999, and for years it's been accused of human rights abuses, shooting civilians, beating civilians, so much so that a few years ago it was actually removed by the government of Israel from the West Bank and relocated to the Golan Heights.
Damn.
And also, could you, for those who are not familiar with the Leahy Amendment, the 1997 law that requires the United States to cut off financial aid to or military aid to units that are credibly accused of human rights violations?
I agree with
Sure. So the Leahy law was developed specifically to address specific units inside of any foreign government. There are other laws on the books that are much broader, much more general, but they've never been implemented in a systematic way. So the Leahy law wanted to address that. Senator Leahy and others thought if the State Department could identify specific units inside of these governments and then disqualify them from receiving aid, then that would have, more of a salutary effect.
It reeks of neoliberalism, though, quite frankly. Of just like, oh well, we want to make it look like we care, but we also want to make sure we change nothing and fully agree with the military-industrial complex and all this other crap. We're not real leaders. We don't really have a vision. Reeks of this. Little slap on the wrist.
Than they had been seeing with previous laws. Like I was saying before, most other countries have to apply for aid on a unit-by-unit basis. So they will first ask the State Department if they can use American financing for equipment, arms, training, that sort of thing. And then the State Department will review that unit, see if they're on the no-fly list, if they've been disqualified. But for Israel, Egypt, it's different. They receive so much aid, so much financing that the State Department has been largely blind to what specific units are using that aid. That's why they came up with this forum, this amendment in 2019. This forum was meant to kind of look back and address specifically which units should be disqualified, and then we would give that list over to the governments of Israel and Egypt.
And finally, just to be clear, Brett, we've heard in the last days that Biden is cutting off aid to the ultra-Orthodox unit. Talk about, was there a meeting between Blinken and Benny Gantz? Is this aid being cut off?
So he's been asked, Secretary Blinken has been asked several times, as well as his spokespersons, what's the status of those cases, and he has so far punted. And we know over the weekend, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Benny Gantz, they have been publicly in.
Look at that. Those are handcuff wounds. Those are wounds from handcuffs that are put way too tight, and then you're jerked around by them. Look at that. Incredibly painful.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, Benny Gantz, they have been publicly and fiercely lobbying against any proposed sanctions. Benny Gantz said he called Blinken personally and they talked about it. They want him to reverse course.
They're whipping him?
Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Brett Murphy, reporter for ProPublica, where his latest pieces are Netanyahu resists U.S. plan to cut off aid to Israeli military unit, and Blinken sitting on staff recommendations to sanction Israeli military units linked to killings or rapes.
Hello, Potty. Hello. Okay, here we go. All right, and we're done with the horror of Gaza for now. Jesus, it's like watching a really intense movie that is just like you can't, like, oh my God, is it over? the horror. You know, I couldn't even imagine experiencing. I can't even report on it without it just completely nuking me. Well, you know, whatever. My day's fine. I'm not getting bombed. Oh, God, I gotta fix this. Look at this. Look at the difference. Jesus. Whatever. All right, we're gonna finish today with Ukraine news. Nothing left in the Gaza tab group. Oh, I got so much. I have so much crap. But a lot of the stuff that's left over is like long stuff, like 20, 40 minutes. You know, really interesting interviews, really good mini documentaries, things like that. So I don't want to drag the midday stream. Should be pretty snappy, should be pretty quick, 2 to 3 hours at the very most. We're already cracking 2 hours here, so I want to finish up with Ukraine. Keep it under 2.5. Heard there have been more heroic defenses. There absolutely have been, and we're going to be seeing a whole lot more. The Russian offensive is going to be starting soon, and there is talk about meat grinder. You know, they're going to be coming in thinking that they got some kind of momentum, and they're going to be running up against a motherfucking brick wall, bitch. It's going to be insane. It's going to be insane. A lot of U.S. voters are obsessed with foreign wars, or are they actually? They don't really care. Most people don't really. They have like, you know, it's like, yeah, well, the Ukrainian people shouldn't have to be invaded. That's fine. I agree with that. If support for Ukraine meant, you know, real, I mean, all we needed to see was the gas prices rise a little bit for a lot of Americans to go, I don't know if we should be helping Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, more ammo needed to counter the Russian waves. It's on its way. It's on its way. Let's get to it. Speaking of that, it's a great transition because here it is. Biden signs $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And yeah, no, nothing for Palestine. No, that was dropped pretty quick. That was taken off the table almost immediately. It was weird to even see it on the list of Mike Johnson priorities. Americans only care about wars when they start and when they affect gas prices at the pump. Yeah, I mean, I mean, we do care if we're losing the war, but we can lose a war for a really long time. You just don't have to tell us about it. Just keep that shit off the media. If you can keep it at a low rumble, keep the atrocities at a low minimum, keep it out of the news, keep everyone distracted, America can lose a war for years, and Americans won't care. You see through the transparency. Yeah, no, we're looking into the abyss. Oh, you see through the 70%? No. No. You're talking about the public in general? No. The public in general, the normies are they're fueled by emotion. It's emotion. It's not like, I base my conclusions off of a, fact-based. I did my own research. I legitimately did research on this topic, and I'm basing my own conclusion off this. Grand majority of people don't have the time for that, and and they don't have the the mental fortitude for that sometimes. So that's why that's why optics and messaging is extremely important for the left when it comes to creating change. We have to accept that there will always be normies. There's no amount of education. They're not going to wake up. They're not going to get it. Right? No matter how many leaflets and pamphlets we throw at them, how many well-crafted manifestos we have to accept that a grand majority of people are emotion-based, and they're also, selfish. They can be convinced, of course, to vote against their own self-interest, but a grand majority of people are just like, well, I'm worried about my family, I'm worried about my day-to-day, I'm worried about surviving, I'm worried about, my own peace, my own harmony. And it's really hard. It takes a lot of time and energy to find time outside of that, especially in this capitalist hellhole that we have. Yada yada yada. So the left needs to understand that there's going to be no proletariat revolution. Okay, not as long as Netflix exists. Netflix and easy access to pornography. Sorry, Marx is screwed. I'd be curious to see what Marx would have to say about the modern situation. Aldous Huxley had it right with Brave New World. It's all about soma. It's all about masking the pain with pleasure. All right, so let's get to it. Biden signs $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday signed into law an aid package that includes aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, as well as a provision that would force social media site TikTok to be sold or be banned in the U.S.
There we go.
The signing of the assistance package comes after a long battle between Democrats and Republicans in Congress over the much-needed assistance to Ukraine. It's a good day for America, it's a good day for Europe, and it's a good day for world peace. It's going to make America safer, it's going to make the world safer, and it continues America's leadership in the world, and everyone knows it, Biden said at White House event while announcing the signing of the package. We rose to the moment.
Canal 13 has been using AI from the very beginning. Not that it's that great. I would prefer a human being reading this, but it's not like Canal is like fallen off. This is Canal 13.
We came together and we got it done. Now we need to move fast.
Just let him quote. Let him. It's just, we don't need that. Okay, whatever.
And we are, he went on saying. The U.S. president underscored that the bill also includes a surge of humanitarian relief for Palestinians in Gaza suffering as the Israel-Hamas war continues. He stressed that Israel must ensure the humanitarian aid for Palestinians in bill reaches Gaza without delay.
Yeah, no, the current Nancy Pelosi Clintonian neoliberal party needs to die with Joe Biden. And we need an Ilham Omar, we need an AOC, we need fresh blood to take over leadership for this party for its own sake.
Biden also signed the first tranche from about $61 billion military aid package allocated for Ukraine, according to U.S. officials.
I think you're right.
The shipment of the aid would begin in the next few hours. The aid is expected to include air defense capabilities, artillery rounds, armored vehicles.
Yeah, and you know this shit's getting expedited, son. You know this shit's gonna get expedited. Some of this shit's gonna get to the front lines in weeks. In weeks, boy. Yeah. And fuck you, Mike Johnson, for trying to scheme and find a way around this. You should have done this month one. You political idiot. Mike Johnson over here pulling out all the stops, trying to find some way to scheme around helping Ukraine. And thank goodness for the neoliberals, because it's the neoliberals who stood their ground on this and said, no, we're not budging. We're not going to rescue you and your political career unless you help Ukraine. And they held true to that. Took them long enough, that's for sure. Now, Ro Khanna, I guess, but I mean, honestly, Ro Khanna is really disappointing sometimes when it comes to his defense of Joe Biden, especially with how he's handling Israel. But yeah, Ro Khanna, I guess, Ro Khanna is better than Joe Manchin, but it's just, that bar is just, woo, that bar, man, I tell you.
Vehicles and other weapons to boost Ukrainian forces amid intensified Russian attacks.
Voting is incredibly important, Crawl on the Wall. Voting is an incredibly important element to this idea, and help each other. Yeah, no. What we need to do is join a political organization and start putting in the work and time, just like the right-wing fascists. When Charlie Kirk asks for money, the right-wing fascists donate. When Steve Bannon asks for money, when Donald Trump asks for money and support, the right-wing fascists donate. What do the left do? What does the left do? Sure, sometimes we come in, help people, want to support stuff. Oh, man, Tisrael, that shit is in the Mariana Trench. So the Ukraine has been supplied on credit for a while now. Much of the $50 billion will cover that. Excellent. How Ukraine is trying to increase mobilization for military service. So we're seeing Zelensky still kind of being a bit of a, I'm not going to say coward, of course, but we're going to say he's being a little too cautious about putting Ukraine on a total war footing. I think he has no choice. I think he should have done it months ago. But But here we have, kind of, doing his own shadow mobilization, which I do think is essential. Ukraine actually has one of the oldest elderly armies, and elderly in the military means like 40s. But a lot of 40-year-olds on the front lines in Ukraine. They're not, they're refreshed by other veterans. And it's time for more Ukrainian military age Ukrainians to get in here and push back against Russia, or else the entire world is at risk. Not the entire world, I guess, but the entire world is at risk to being pulled into a much larger military conflict. Not that Russia is going to take over the world. That's absurd. But if we would like to avoid Western boots on the ground, this is our opportunity. Crawl on the wall. Don't you fucking dare start with your defeatist. Can't we just all get along? War is bad bullshit. When another country, when a fucking person busts down your door and sticks a gun in your face, do you get on your knees and beg for mercy? Is that what you do? Is that what you're, asking for? No, I didn't think so. I knew it. I fucking knew it, Crawl on the wall. I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. So Ukraine shouldn't push back. Ukraine shouldn't defend itself, huh? War is bad, so Ukraine should just give it up? Is that what you're saying? Oh, well, Ukraine's just a puppet state of the West. Ukraine's just a puppet state of Uncle Sam. I asked you a question, Crawl on the wall. Do you advocate for Ukraine giving up? Is that what you're advocating? And yeah, Afghanistan did. I don't know about comparable to Napoleon. He's got to have a couple more big wins. Zelensky hasn't had an Austerlitz. Crawl on the wall. I asked you a fucking question, buddy. You got one more opportunity to answer before you get the motherfucking boot. Is the invasion... First of all, I don't think you think the invasion is justified. But is Ukraine justified in defending itself? Should Ukraine give up? Yeah. Uh-huh. So Ukraine has a right to defend itself, right? Or should they just give up because war bad? Answer the question, Crawl. My patience is running dry. Uh-huh. Yeah, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Come on, honey. There it is. There it is, man. Jesus fucking Christ. It's just pathetic. Thank you for your time. How Ukraine is trying to increase mobilization for military service. This is a report from DW. Let's get to it.
Now to Ukraine, and the governor of the country's second largest city, Kharkiv, says at least 6 people have been injured in Russia's latest missile attack. Buildings and cars have been damaged, as well as a gas pipeline in the center of the city.
I'm playing games, motherfucker.
The Kharkiv mayor said that 2 long-range missiles were used in the attack. He added that the city is trying to restore the gas supply to the affected area. It's been more than 2 years now since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since then, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men have been called up to serve in the military. Many have not returned. We spoke to one mother who is coming to terms with her own loss.
Natalia Stadnik had 3 sons when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
This is my son, my youngest son.
Last summer, Natalia buried her youngest, Oleksiy. He served in some of the bloodiest battles of the war.
Great job, Mike Johnson.
My youngest was in Solidar.
How many people did the Republicans and Mike Johnson get killed? Because they didn't have the ammo and resources they needed to defend their positions, and they were overrun by the 250th Russian meat wave.
After Solidar, he was in Bakhmut. After Bakhmut, he was in Kherson. And he was near Antonivka in Kherson. There's a country village called Antonivska. He was killed there.
The day of Alexei's death, Natalia tried to convince him to leave the army. She feared he'd share the same fate as her eldest son, Serhiy, who had just been reported missing. Her middle son, Andriy, is also listed as missing. Natalia hopes her older sons are alive, but there's been no confirmation. She likes to remember them as they appear in these photos.
This is my eldest son, Serhiy. This is my Andryusha. This is Alyosha.
These guys went in there knowing exactly what they were fighting for. And we're gonna let their sacrifice go to shit because what, we don't like war, we don't like a little violence? Bullshit. We're all down for violence when it benefits us as a nation or us as a country or a race or whatever the fuck. Oh, it's not your country. It's a democracy. That's all that matters to me. It's a group of people that demand liberty, that demand freedom. They don't want to be under the yoke of an empire. That's what those boys died for. Let me tell you something. If democracy and liberty isn't worth dying for, then I don't know what the fuck is.
They were happy. My boys can do everything. Cooking and baking. They grew up well. They grew up together. I have boys who read a lot. All three of them graduated from music school.
Natalia is supported by her daughters-in-law, Olena and Olesya. They call her mother.
We tried to call whenever possible to ask how Mom is doing.
I live closer, so she comes to us.
Do you think these ladies would want Zelensky, after their brother's sacrifice, would want Zelensky to just lay down, give up Crimea, give up the Donbass, give a portion of Kherson away? Yeah, well, their sacrifices weren't, well, they were, they shouldn't have done it. We should have just capitulated to Russia. You think that's where they're coming from?
Sits with her grandchildren. My mother is also retired, but if there's no one...
We asked Mom to come and she does.
Since their husbands disappeared, Olena and Olesya are in constant contact trying to find out what happened to them. No one gives us any official confirmation. Olesya and I wrote letters together to the security service of Ukraine. We constantly receive the same answer, that the Russian side does not provide any information. There is no confirmation of any kind.
If those have been paying attention closely understand the reality of the situation, is that these poor guys are either currently in an area that's occupied by Russia and their bodies are sitting there rotting, or they're, collected in some pile somewhere and just haven't been recorded yet. The idea that we're gonna prevent more death by acquiescing is ridiculous to me after Bucha.
Natalia says the lack of information is unbearable, but she hasn't lost hope that she'll one day be able to hug her sons again.
What can I say? Honestly, I try to smile and not show my emotions. I take fewer walks so that no one asks what's going on. If they do, my head starts to hurt and I run away. I don't want to be seen.
Our correspondent Karolina Chimoy is in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, and joins us now. Karolina, Ukraine is trying to mobilize more of its population for military service, including those living abroad. How important is this recruitment drive for Ukraine?
Oh, this is quite important. Terry, the commander-in-chief already said that he needs at least 250,000 more soldiers. And we also know that Russian troops outnumber Ukrainian troops by up to 10 times. This means that for every Ukrainian soldier, there could be as many as 10 Russian soldiers. So it is a very important point for Ukraine to get more manpower, not only more weapons, but also more soldiers, more manpower.
So how are they going about that exactly, Carolina? What does this new recruitment drive entail?
Well, Terry, all men between 18 and 60 years old have to register with Ukrainian's military. And not only that, but they also have to carry the registration on them at all time, because Ukrainian authorities are allowed to ask them anywhere about this registration. And
Kim Goblin, has this happened to you yet? Have you been? Are they going to college campuses? Because I know that you get a student exemption, but have you been checked on that?
it has to be up to date. If it is not, they don't only have to pay a fee, but they also have to immediately.
Yeah, the idea that Russia would respect the Geneva Conventions more than the West would, when the West, laughs in the face of Geneva Conventions, is pretty ridiculous. Not that, one justifies the other. Right, that would be really nice if Russia were setting a standard much higher than the United States. That would be really great to have that kind of entity on the global stage, as powerful as Russia is, trying to set a better example than the United States. But that's just not the fucking reality of the situation. So you do have a card that you carry around, huh, Kim? Interesting.
Register with Ukrainians military. So also for all men in service age who are living abroad, they will not be able to renew their passports, for example, at Ukrainian consulates without registering for the military. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Kuleba, he also said that this is only fair for the soldiers who are fighting right now at the front line, because it cannot be an excuse to be a Ukrainian man in that age, and just because they're living abroad, to not be fighting in a country that is at war, of course. The aim of all this, Terry, is of course to make the recruitment procedure more transparent and more efficient according to Ukrainian government officials.
Now, our report features a woman who had 3 sons in the war. One was killed, 2 are now missing. Some countries put limits on the number of siblings who can go to war. Is there no such restriction in Ukraine, Carolina?
There is not such a restriction, Terry, and this is why this woman had to let their sons go to the war. There are no laws that would prohibit this, and as I mentioned,
I think that law is important. They're talking about that's the whole plot of Saving Private Ryan, right? Is that there was the 3 sons were at war, 2 of them had died, so the 3rd one gets to go home. Yeah, send in Tom Hanks, exactly. I do think that is it's ghoulish in its own way, conciliatory and ghoulish in its own way, right? But I do think, just speaking from a like a human rights perspective, or just like I don't know, the grief of a mother. I don't think any other pain really could even come close to that kind of grief. So I do think that something like that is important. Decent movie. It's a good movie, yeah.
It is quite important from the Ukrainian military perspective to get more soldiers right now, because without more help from the Western countries and without more manpower, Ukraine will lose this war.
That's right.
Carolina, thank you very much. That
has to be something worth winning, if at all possible. That's the only reason. That's the only reason this has sustained itself at all. You think those frontline soldiers receiving, when the ammo starts dropping off and they have to start rationing their mortar rounds and their positions are they're hearing over the radio, their comrades' positions are getting overrun. What keeps them there? What keeps them in the trench? The fact that if they leave that trench, that Russia's going to change everything. They don't even get they won't even be going back to Ukraine. You start running. What are you going to achieve? It's quite a powerful motivator. It's the only reason why any of this is even possible. Because the amount of waves, the amount of just wave after wave after wave that the Russians send on these positions, hundreds of attempts, thousands of dead bodies, thousands of dead soldiers on the Russian side, and they just roll over them, you know, plowing through minefields. Yeah, eventually one of our waves will get through. The Jimmy conventions get to make a phone call with their families. Yeah, clutch cargo. That's true. Yeah, Ukraine. I mean, because they want to enjoy the support of the West. Isn't that interesting? How the West holds Ukraine to a higher standard that even the United States probably wouldn't hold itself to. Maybe. God, you know, looking into Vietnam, it's like a crazy. You know, we're setting up hospitals and feeding people while we're burning their homes down, and it's Jesus. In terms of like, you know, it's just like we try to it's we try to get the best of both worlds, right? We try to be a powerful empire that you can't mess with while also somehow respecting human rights, and it's just a mess. It's just a total mess. Heroes, yeah. Troop shortage, Ukraine's weak link. Is it fatal over the long term? No, it's a problem that, if ignored, can turn into a catastrophe, much like the ammo starvation that they were experiencing up until very recently. You know, that was at a critical stage right there. There was, you know, there was some pretty hard decisions that were going to have to be made if this aid package wasn't passed. But yeah, no. So there's no real weak link right now, but there's a couple links in the chain that are receiving way too much pressure, and that pressure needs to be relieved. And one of those is ammo, so we're relieving that pressure, and the other one is fresh bodies. You know, and let's, you know, it takes at least a year to turn around a person to train them properly. So, you know, this is. We won't even see the ramifications of this action until next year. But yeah, that is definitely one of the, like I said, not weak link, but like problem that could turn into a catastrophic problem if ignored. Update from Ukraine: Ukrainian counterattack near Ivanske crushed Russian offensive plans. So here's just another example of what I've been talking about. How, you know, there's just a big difference. You know, these frontline soldiers know what they're fighting for. They're not confused about what's happening, about what Russia is and the motivations, and they're not gaslit by Twitter into thinking that this isn't worth it. They know exactly what they're fighting and dying for out there. And even now, with short on ammo currently, and that's of course being fixed, but right now, short on ammo, they're able to do these devastating strikes against Russia because they're just so the rest of the soldiers are just not equipped, they're not trained, they're not disciplined. But there's always more of them. There's always more of them. It doesn't really matter if they're, you know, all with it, if they're all, you know, totally trained really well and brave. A lot of these guys are brave, by the way, these Russian soldiers. I hate to say it. But what else would you call piling onto an APC, 12, 15 people on top of a tank or APC, plowing through a minefield? Don't forget, bravery and stupidity are, you know, basically hang out after school, okay? They hang out, they're right next to each other. Even with the aid that's going, there's going to be some tough decisions being made. Yeah, I mean, all that aid is going to go into buttressing the defenses for this Russian offensive that's coming. And if Ukraine is able to not allow Russia to take one more inch of land, and in fact push Russia back in some places during this offensive, well, that changes the narrative right there. Let's get to it. We haven't heard from Dennis in a while. Thought we'd watch a video. How you doing, Dennis?
My name is Dennis, and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's start this video from the front lines review. Today, for a very long time, we see a blue movement of the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainian army went on a counterattack very close to the Bakhmut city before Russia tried many times their attacks near Ivanovsk.
So, I mean, how many months has it been since Bakhmut? And this is as far as that they've gotten. You know, like this isn't some blitzkrieg. This isn't, you know, Russia running over it. Okay, zoom out on that map a little bit. Okay, and you'll see, like, oh wow, if you think about the amount of Russian soldiers and materiel that went into getting this meager amount of territory, you would see just how crazy it is to think that as long as the Ukrainians continue to fight at this pace, that they won't be able to push back Russia. They hunt tens of thousands of soldiers, thousands of tanks and APCs and mortars and all, you know, all this drones, all this equipment. That's as far as that Russia's gotten since taking Bakhmut, what, 4 months ago, 5 months ago? Just to give you an idea of how hard it is for Russia to take a single step forward.
So let's zoom into the territory to see everything more precisely. I turn to the satellite image because it shows more details, streets, buildings sometimes, and here you can see that Ukraine liberated 2 of the forest lines and the part of the unpaved road. I think that the Russian army didn't expect this move from Ukrainian side, and indeed, I didn't expect it either. The main military support is still being discussed in Senate while I'm recording this video. By the way, we have good news about it too. I believe that this night the military bill will be supported by Senate, and this week, obviously, Joe Biden will sign it 100%. Nevertheless, let's go back to our play. So here, Ukraine might potentially strike Russian forces into a vulnerable spot because Russia was concentrated mostly on advancing towards Ivanovsk. So it is their main supply road. Because the Ukrainian army is now very close to those supplies, 1.2 kilometers, 0.8 miles, something like that. It means that Russian supplies might be disturbed by Ukrainian army using any sort of the weaponry. I mean, not just the FPV drones, but mortars and in some of the cases, machine guns. Plus, Ukraine has Bradleys and tanks, and those are just the wide open fields, a perfect place for the drone usage. Well, I'm still in doubt that this counteroffensive would go to Bakhmut and it would be very fast and big. No, I'm sure that it will just stay mostly at the same place, but the main purpose for it is to disturb the Russian supplies in Ivanovsk, to slow down the Russian offensive in this village. This village is very crucial for Ukraine, because if we zoom out, you can see that the next story is Chasiv Yar. Ukraine should keep Russians away from that settlement. Otherwise,
so I hear Chasiv Yar is a pretty damn important strategic location.
Russia might have a serious bridgehead to continue their offensive in the future, for example, towards Konstantinovka. Yeah, now it is located very far away from the front lines, but we know that Russia concentrated lots of the resources to continue their attacks and to intensify it in May or June, so during the summer campaign. They're getting ready for it. We see it from the intelligence reports from the Ukrainian side and from our allies. But Ukraine is still damn capable. Remember how our guys forced Russia to leave Klishchiivka, and still there were fights for this village, but now Russia just stands still over there. Judging on the current situation in Ukrainian army with ammunition, with artillery shells, this advancement really looks like significant breakthrough. But again, it's not the part of the major counterattack. No, it's the tactical mission, which in this case was successful for Ukraine. So Ukraine, you did awesome job for a very long time, boosting morale of the soldiers who are fighting in this particular direction. But
I mean, the fact that Ukraine felt confident enough to take any position right now, but really it's a way to pull resources away from. So it's kind of a defensive move to move forward and take this part offensively. So it's not like a major breakthrough like Dennis is describing, but it does show that that the Ukrainian military feels like they're in some, it's not exactly like they're in total control of every situation, but that they're, that they're capable enough to make an offensive move like this that is strategically sound way to pull resources away from other locations on the front line. Because it's all about this Chasiv Yar right here. So this offensive right here is going to force Russia to pull some resources away from this push into Chasiv Yar. So it's a very smart move. A mega breakthrough. I don't know about that. They're probably going to have to pull out of this area once those resources are reconfigured. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good. Good thing.
Also have
good
not
stuff.
so good news coming from the front lines. For example, in Ocheretine, then Russia expands their attack vector really far away from the main front lines, creating the sort of the attack fist towards this settlement. I think
and movements like this weren't capable when Ukraine was properly supplied. This kind of shit was not possible by Russia when Ukraine had enough ammo. So hopefully scenarios like this will be changing very quickly. These rapid extensions that we've seen a couple examples of this. You could see on the map earlier with the Chasiv Yar. You see those arrows pointing out. Those are more examples of them pushing out pretty aggressively because there's just not enough artillery. There's not enough drones. There's not enough pressure on them. They're able to push in and take those positions.
That their goal is not to continue their advancement. Their main goal is to keep it under control. I mean, Ocheretine creating a bridgehead, and then they will try to advance from other places. So what's the bad news for today? That Ukraine was...
Oh, yeah, Chem Goblin, sure. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Quite late cutting this fist from the main front lines. Probably Ukraine didn't...
Oh, that's interesting, Chem Goblin. You want to give us some more details? I didn't hear about that.
Have enough resources to do so. And here we have the advancement of the Russian army in just 4 of the days.
4 days?
I would say a successful advancement for them and unfortunate for Ukraine. Clearly, the defense of the settlement wasn't organized properly. However, Ocheretine is not the main part of the Ukrainian defense lines. Let me show you the other picture. So we have this map of Ukrainian trenches and defense lines. At least the major ones of them. So Russia is now 3 kilometers away from the main defense line, if we may call it like that, because they're not interconnected, but they've built recently to protect the other Ukrainian territory. Those, I would say, are more robust compared to what we have in Ocheretine. Also, you may call this stuff a defense line and this one as well. As I said to you a minute ago, I don't see that Russia is going to move to the most protected area right now. By doing so, they would just extend this long sausage and create vulnerability of their supplies.
Son of a bitch.
Meanwhile, for them, it's also hard to advance from this side.
Let's take a look at Chem Goblin's link here. So, Davey, welcome back, by the way, Davey. They left their positions. Well, come on, man. I can't read this. I'll take your word for it, Chem.
Because they're quite robust defense lines from Ukraine. So they will just occupy this village and stay there for quite a long time. After, they'll try to search for the weak spots, and the weakest spot is, I think, over here. So they will try to expand this bridgehead towards southwest. They may also try to advance from this place, however, it will be very hard for them to do. So maybe they'll go from this side as well. At least it's the logical thing for me based on what we see on this picture. But Ukraine absolutely needs to cope with this Russian threat, and today Ukraine tried to do it, however, unsuccessfully. So this analysis from the Michael 73 was posted this morning, based on the images coming from the drones and the reports from Ukrainian soldiers. Here, Ukraine tried to counterattack using artillery in the vast areas, also tanks. The idea was to cut this Russian fist from the supplies, but it didn't work. Instead, Russia sent more reinforcements, and here they go with their attack vector. So even during the morning time, they got some success in this region. But Ukrainian counterattack this time failed, however, with no losses for Ukrainian vehicles. And this is the evening update. Already you may see that Russia is very fast occupying Ocheretine. Maybe for this hour they already occupied this village fully, because it was in a gray zone, and you see that definitely they advanced quite fast, expanding their bridgehead even more. Now there is even a threat for the Solovyovo village. And as we know, in this area there are not so robust defense lines. Compared to the northern side, that is why Russia advances towards the place. They have the air surveillance, they have satellites. It's basically impossible to hide the Ukrainian troops' locations in a modern-day war with all of those tools. In general, the situation in this place is very difficult for the Ukrainian army, and obviously we see that defense collapsed at this place. On X, I see kind of the strange rhetorics from some of the military experts and some of the soldiers of the Ukrainian army, because I know that this account strikes for sure belongs to Ukrainian soldier. And he comments that it's 105th Brigade to be even punished or blamed for maybe poor defense. Well, honestly, my friends, I wouldn't blame any kind of Ukrainian soldiers. Mainly, they do what they were told to do by their commanders and other military officers. Yeah. Maybe the command of 105th Brigade.
They didn't just go, fuck it, let's go watch the new Civil War movie, guys. I hear it's a banger. Yeah, that didn't happen. They were commanded to do so.
I put under the question, but not the entire brigade itself. And for me, it's very strange to see this comment from a real Ukrainian soldier. Well, actually, there were some of the attempts before to blame some of the Ukrainian brigades, for example, for poor defense in Avdiivka. So the 3rd South Brigade should have performed the job for them. I heard this information, and honestly, we are out of clue of what really happened out there, as well as in Ocheretine. Probably will have...
And look, mistakes happen, guys. Battlefield mistakes happen, but when you're under the kind of pressure that Ukraine is under, any mistake can be a massive breakthrough for Russia. And that's why clowns like Mike Johnson, who are playing games with Ukrainian lives, are such bastards. Because this kind of shit, it's to be expected, but it doesn't need to be this, this gaping opening wound that is so easily taken advantage of. But mistakes do happen, and if we didn't just bail on them like we did for 6 months, it might not have been as bad. But you never know. Who knows?
More details in the future. The military command is first of all responsible for organizing the proper defense, not the soldiers. And here we have the picture in general. So yes, it was too late for Ukrainian army to commence this counterattack, and Russia goes in attack in this area. They have more resources compared to Ukrainian army, so they're gonna use them widely, especially this time that the military aid for Ukraine hasn't been delivered yet. A great risk also goes for this area between Semenovka and Berdichi. There is a river, which I just showed you. As usual, every river plays the role of the natural obstacle barricade. So if Russia penetrates that obstacle, it would create many more problems for Ukraine, especially in those open fields. So this could be the other big issue for Ukrainian army. As we see, Russia still keeps initiative on the front lines. Yeah. Hopefully, with the new military support, the Russian army advancement will be stopped on the front lines. But anyways, I expect it to happen close to the autumn time. By that time, Russia would occupy many more territories, unfortunately. At least we have this forecast also from Ukrainian officials and from Budanov, the intelligence chief of Ukraine. Just a short break, my friends. If you want to support the job that I do on YouTube daily, you may join my Patreon team. You may find the link in the video description just below for it, or scan the QR code available on the screen.
Make sure you help him out, folks. Dennis has been doing a great job.
Thank you so much for your kind support. But it seems like the Russian army is also in trouble, especially with their incompetent military command, and today we see the sign of it. I think that it happened for the first time in the Russian modern history. The deputy of the defense minister of the Russian Federation, Timur Ivanov, was arrested for bribe today. This guy had a perfect position in the Russian military. Man, he was responsible for the military constructions, also for the mortgage for the military personnel. If some Russian officer or soldier wants to buy the apartment, they usually have a discount from their army in the bank, so it calls a military mortgage. Plus, he was responsible for the renewal of Mariupol city, for all of the constructions out there. Well, definitely a best position in the Russian armed forces. objectives. But
yeah, Chem Goblin, that's a good point, because that tells us that Russia is taking this more seriously than maybe they were at the start. That, you know, that they're willing to go after some of these characters right here, that they're in it for the long haul.
As it happens with gambling in the Russian corrupt army, you need to stop at some point. Otherwise, the system would just eat you. And that is what we witness here. I believe it's the long chain of the corruption in the Russian army. I mean, military commanders. It's not just the single person guilty, but I'm sure that only this guy will be to blame for. The other branches of the Russian army are also damn corrupt. This system is just unable to work in different way, and that's why Russia has severe losses, many more compared to Ukraine. Remember, last year the Russian air defense general was charged with bribery. A very similar story, but it happened after Moscow appeared under Ukrainian drones attacks. Meanwhile, Russia continues to modernize their equipment against Ukrainian drone attacks, and here is the Russian MTLB full with the fishing nets. Probably at some point it might help, but at the same time it's very hard to operate this unit. It's hard to evacuate from it. Here they put this wooden stick to get into the vehicle from the aft part. But if you need to leave the vehicle, if it got damaged, how would you lift up this very heavy metal cage? Because this one is metal. A very interesting solution by the Russian army. The same we may say about this track. It's also hard to leave it. Probably there is the door over here or over there, but definitely this one could be more or less safe against the FPV drone strikes, because the distance from the net to the vehicle is quite large in this case. Well, the previous modifications were more or less okay, but this one just blows my mind, because Russia installed, particular Russian soldiers, installed the net on aft part of their motorcycle. So here's the China-made motorcycle which they use, and they put this net on the aft part.
I mean, even if it isn't, you know, very, yeah, the bike one's a little bit more lame, but I mean, even it's really, you know, when you're on the bike, anything, you know, it's like soldiers wear helmets. And how many, you know, how statistically, how likely is the helmet actually going to save your life, you know, from a bullet directly shot at it, right? But they still put the helmets on, right? Because it kind of gives you that anything's better than nothing kind of feeling. But yeah, they're getting clever. You know, we had an opportunity. We had a really great opportunity to really, you know, pile it on. And what did Joe Biden do? Oh, he kind of, okay, well, we're going to wait and see. You know, we had a great opportunity to hit Russia when they were vulnerable to this stuff. And now the countermeasures are coming out. And, you know, the Russia has gone into a total war stance, with full-blown, basically doing a bigger mobilization, tripling, quadrupling down when it comes to ammo manufacturing, doing everything they can to secure their economy through other chains, through other relationships with other countries. And the whole time, the West kind of, we got an election, and I don't know if we want to escalate, and I don't know, and GGG. It kind of proves Putin correct, because the whole idea is that he's gonna get away with this because of the fractured nature of the Western consensus. And so far, he's kind of been correct. We've kind of let him. We've pushed back, but we're scared. We're cowed. Oh no, World War III. We don't want to escalate. And that works perfectly into Putin's strategy and plans.
Hard, which is a totally useless solution, because if the drone hits the net, obviously debris, the shrapnel, it would go and hit everything around. So they just carry the dead weight on their motorcycle. It's bad, but Ukraine still has the issues with the air defense systems. Just Germany announced that it will send one of the systems to Ukraine. Germany is also looking for other solutions for Ukraine. Netherlands say that they will try to purchase one of the systems from some of the other country and deliver it to Ukraine. Here we speak about the Patriot systems. Poland says that it needs its Patriot systems to defend its own territory because there is a risk from Belarus.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, Poland has those risks. As for the France and Italy, they haven't come to the conclusion of whether they have enough capabilities to supply SAM-T systems to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials say that potentially Ukraine might obtain 4 of the air defense Patriot systems soon, and 7 in general, but Le Monde, this news source, says that there could be problems with that, and indeed we see that there are some of the big issues. Chancellor Scholz calls the United States of America to give at least 1 of the Patriot systems to Ukraine. But again, there is no robust solution for the coming months. It is bad because Russia promised to intensify the aerial attacks on Ukraine if the Ukrainian military bill will be signed by Joe Biden. Clearly a blackmail from the Russian side, and they continue to use their terror strategy. About the combat videos, my friends, probably you know that I'm unable to post those on this platform because of the restrictions that YouTube applies for most of my videos, but I usually...
All right, folks, so that's all the time I got for Dennis. Big props for him. Big props to your boy, Dennis Dadrov from Ukraine. Wonderful guy. Buy his merch. Help him out. Subscribe to his Telegram. Apparently, Ukraine is in talks with the U.S. about making Patriots in Ukraine. Talks that should have happened a year ago. There should have been immediate planning and execution of ammo factories in Poland and Ukraine. And the United States should have pulled out its big fat fucking wallet to make it happen. A complete and total lack of leadership from Joe Biden, which is par for the course for that man. Oh, I'm so scared to make a decision. Oh, no. I'm only the leader of the goddamn free world. Yeah, Davey pointing out that there's I don't know where this package came from, but another extra $1 billion package. Is this an expedited ammo package? Announces presidential drawdown authority package. What? Where the fuck did this? How come this wasn't done months ago? What the fuck is this? He can just do this? No, this is included in the 60. Oh, okay. Okay, this is part of that. Okay. He can now. Oh, okay. So he does this immediately as soon as it's approved. Okay. All right, so they're getting some missiles, Stinger missiles, small arms, rounds for small arms, 50 caliber. Got some HIMARS, 155, they need them. 105, they need them. 60 mil, big time, they need them. This is the shit that's getting expedited right away. This looks like this is like the most important stuff right here. Night vision, anti-armor, yeah, javelins. Yep, tube launch TOWs, logistics support vehicles. Yeah, this is like literally the frontline everything. This is everything they need for the front line. So hopefully this is the stuff getting expedited right now. Also revealed that Biden has already provided Ukraine with ATACMs a few months ago. Ukraine already has them. All right, I mean, okay. Credit where credit is due. Credit where credit is due. I think, though, Davey, you would agree that there's not enough happening. That this is nice, that this is needed. Okay, great. ATACMs, he was able to work something out. Where are the planes? Okay, I get it. You don't want American pilots. You don't want NATO pilots in there. Okay, fine. Okay, you don't want NATO boots on the ground to help buttress the northern Ukrainian border. Already staged in Poland. It's likely already in Ukraine hands. Nice to hear that. Nice to hear that. I'm just saying, we had an opportunity. There was like a year ago. There was a great opportunity. Ukraine was taken back big chunks. Maybe it was longer than that. But there was an opportunity to just finish this, to push it right to the edge. And we waited, and I don't know, and oh gee. And now what are we dealing? Now we're dealing with exactly what was predicted, some quagmire. That's exactly what Putin wants, because he knows the West doesn't have an appetite for the quagmire, especially if he gets Trump in. If he gets the right, more time he buys for the right wing to get in charge. The 1 million artillery shells. This is good news. This is good news. Yeah, Davey, let them deal with that. You know? Let them deal with that problem. But give them the planes. No, Clutch Cargo, they shouldn't have it by now because of the situation. It's amazing that they were able to hold off Russia as long as they did with the ammo starvation that they were dealing with. If they had sustained support and real leadership from Joe Biden, not just ammo, but, you know, really pushing the pressure on there, like I said, maybe not boots on the ground, but, you know, this worrying about escalation, kicking that shit to the side, then they could have had it by now. Maybe been close to, they would have been in Crimea by now. Also, Britain announced a different military drawdown of 580 million. Okay. I mean, it's something. Train the pilots on its own. Yeah. They should have brought 1,000 pilots here to train immediately when the war. But immediately, you know, all this shit, man. It's shocking to me that we're now talking about ammo manufacturing. Like, what? What, did you guys think that this was you were gonna, you know, win this war off hand-me-downs from the, you know, from a Cold War storage? Oh yeah, I guess we got some artillery shells from 30 years ago. Here you go. You thought that was gonna win the war for you? What, the West? They ask him, what are you doing here? Hector, he answers, I mind. Oh, okay. This is kind of funny, I guess. UK in some emergency state. Well, the Tories are after Brexit. You could say that it's kind of an emergency. Yeah, exactly. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. You know, there's conventional weapons that Joe Biden hasn't approved yet because we're worried about escalation. Meanwhile, Russia taking cities and killing Ukrainian frontline soldiers. Is it escalation if it's doomed to happen if you don't? Oh yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, strategy. Maybe you should work for Joe Biden. It's not like they don't have people telling them this. It goes back to what I'm saying with the lack of leadership. Joe Biden's got people in front of him saying, this is the smart move. This is the time to act. You should do it now. But then Joe Biden goes, oh, what about my political career? And then he makes a decision. That's not a real leader. You know? Credit where credit's due. And thank you, Davey, for this link. But the reason why Ukraine is in this position right now and not a more favorable position is because of Joe Biden's lack of leadership. And think about it. If Joe Biden and the Democratic Party had more capability for leadership, they wouldn't be allowing themselves to be pulled around by the nose by the right-wing fascistic Republicans who are able to stymie the left-wing agenda. You know, the right wing doesn't let the left stand in the way of their agenda like the left wing does. You know, so imagine, it's like I said, it goes back to leadership. Imagine if Joe Biden and the neoliberals showed any kind of leadership, Ukraine would not be in this position. The right wing wouldn't have been able to stymie this aid. That's a part of it. That's a part of it, Soviet. We can't read the future. But yeah, I mean, any country, you know, that's out the window for the next 30 years. You know, trying to convince any country to give up its nuclear weapons for any reason. Yeah, sure, strategy. Me too. Right, you got that immense privilege of not being attacked, not being bombed. How would your opinions be different? Folks, make sure you're liking and subscribing to Dennis there. I forgot to put the link. All right, folks. You guys are great. Best chat in Twitch. Okay, I guarantee it. Put my chat up next to anyone else's chat. Oh, yeah, you're against free speech. You banned me. You time me out. You banned me. You time me out. Bad actors don't get the opportunity to have a fucking soapbox in my chat. Bad actors and time wasters and people that ignore direct questions from the host They don't get time to soapbox in my chat. You're lucky you just got a timeout, you sons of bitches. So yeah, I got the best chat on Twitch, and I'm going to keep it that way instead of letting bad actors take it over with a bunch of nonsense. Unsourced. If I ask for a source, I better goddamn well get it, or I better have a goddamn good reason why you don't have one. Because when I have to prove my shit, I type it right into fucking Google, just like you do. I have to provide my sources, so the fuck you do too. Sure, woke patriot. Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. It's not like they were calling it. It's funny when I see that in World War movies, in World War II movies, them, you know, they didn't really call it a World War. Did they call it a World War when it was happening? Or was that really something that happened afterwards? Whatever. But no, I got the best chat on Twitch. You guys are awesome. Big props to Woke Patriot, Chem Goblin, Soviet Mind, Davey, Strategy Member, Clutch Cargo. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to Clutch Cargo, by the way. Didn't see Lenny today. Hopefully Lenny's doing all right. Who else in here? Estonian. Thank you, Estonian. All you lurkers, by the way. Thank you, lurkers. First it was called the Great War. That was the first one. Did they just call it the Second Great War? But no, I think, Woke Patriot kind of has a point, though, where you don't really realize the enormity sometimes of the situation just because it's like your day to day. But then looking back on it, you're like, oh, that was actually a huge deal. First World War, but the second one was called the Second World War. Yeah, okay. It was recognized as World War as the Great War became World War One. Ah, okay. So they were calling it World War. It was pretty epic. You know, I've been watching that show, Man in the High Castle, about, the what if Germany won? What if it was, it won in Europe and won in Russia, and Japan and Germany were invading the United States. And it's crazy to think that, that was on the table. That was on the table, Winston Churchill losing and Germany winning, and pretty. Yeah, I hear that, Davey. I hear the ending is really bad. By the way, thank you, Ponder Monkey. Thank you, Trailhead, for coming back. Absolutely lovely to see you guys come through. Thank you. Big props again to Woke Patriot for all your comments. Tisriel, thank you for coming in, Tisriel. I'm sure I'm not saying your name correct, but it's too late now. Terry. Terry stopped in for a minute. Thank you for coming back, Terry. I recognize that weird icon. Yeah, I hear the novel is better. Oh, it's a Philip K. Dick novel. I didn't know that. Yeah, Terry, thank you so much for sticking around. There he is. There's Terry. Dick wrote some great stuff. A lot of it strangely relevant to our times. Yeah, but it's just like, it's we talk about war is bad, but what's there is something worse than war, and that's living under a tyrant, living under a dictatorship, living under authoritarianism is actually worse than war. For me, losing my liberty, losing democracy, losing my freedom is, something that I'm willing to go to war for. Because losing them is worse than war. In my belief. There's not too many things worse than war, if you ask me, though. But losing fundamental human rights is a pretty good one. And we're sinking merchant ships right off the coast of New York. Germany had U-boats that landed in New York and planted spies. Really? War will result in the loss of those freedoms, at least temporarily, in the cause of war. Yeah, that's inevitable, seemingly, and it's ironic. Yeah, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is. World War II showed us that there is a path to redemption. There is a path beyond total annihilation in terms of a solution. No, it isn't, Woke Patriot. I mean, it can be, but like I said, look, if the calculation is fight a war or lose your democratic freedoms, lose your liberty, then I'm fighting a war. War for democracy, on the other hand, is less contradictory. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Woke Patriot. I definitely agree with that. Final solution, the one that doesn't end well, trust me. That's footage of the Germans took of New York. Oh, really? The spy? So they pulled up on U-boats, huh? Oh, Mark Felton's pretty good. Oh, look at that. Did they really? They painted little cartoon skulls on the side of their... Guys, are we the baddies? You sure we're not the baddies, guys? Wow, so they just pulled in? Oh, wow, that's funny. That's interesting. They just pulled up. Got you in my sights, Uncle Sam. You're next. Pretty wild to think, but I mean, if certain battles were lost, if certain leaders were not leaders, if we didn't have Winston Churchill, if we didn't have FDR, right? FDR, right? It was Roosevelt, right? Things could have ended up differently. We got you. We're in our sights. Yeah, it's pretty scary to think, that we could be forced to speak German, but yeah, that's why, up until now, there wasn't a war I could put my, back behind up until Ukraine. Yeah, FDR and Truman. Yeah, thank you. But before the Ukrainian war, before the Russian invasion started, I don't think there was a single war happening on planet Earth that I was like, yeah, this is something worth fighting and dying for. Probably maybe some smaller conflicts where it was like, getting very specific and into the weeds, but no, the Ukrainian conflict is the kind of the first one in my entire life where it was very clear moral decision here is, it's very clear to me who's morally correct. In between invading countries and committing genocide, Nazis stop for a coffee in New York. They were there to check our grammar. Show me your papers. Your homework papers. This is terrible grammar. All right, folks. Let's not forget the solution to our political problems, internationally and locally, is the 3-step program. Step 1, inform yourself. It's not enough to do that, though. Because step 2, we have to sign our name down, put our name down to a political organization of some sort. Whatever it is, a union, a politician, a protest movement, whatever it is, put your fucking name down. And step 3, put in the work. Put in the work like Charlie Kirk. Put in the work like Steve Bannon. These fascists don't sleep, and they're not going to stop until they have full control. The 3-step program is the only thing that has ever worked. And we need to keep doing it. It's called political activism. Got to be politically active. And like I said at the beginning, it's not as fun as sexually active. Sorry. I'm sorry, it's not. Who can swoop? Who can swoop? Who can swoop? The only thing that's ever worked, baby. News Underground, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Abandoned Nihilism, sponsored by Garbage Fuel, #1 drink mix company in the world. Garbage Fuel. Drink your garbage fuel directly from a dumpster. Drink garbage fuel from a dumpster. News Underground. Thank you, everybody. Take care of yourself. Who can swoop?